I still remember the way the air felt that night, heavy like it was pressing down on my skin. There's something about trauma that makes certain details crystallize in your memory while others blur into nothing. The weight of that summer air, the distant sound of fireworks, the smell of his cologne as he leaned in close, his words slicing through me with surgical precision. "I just don't know if I can do this anymore, Allie," he said, his voice a practiced mix of regret and detachment. "You're different now." Damaged goods. Damaged goods. Two words that would echo in my mind for months afterward. Two words that would eventually fuel something in me I never knew existed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start 3 months earlier, when I was still whole in Ethan's eyes. When I was still Allie Matthews, the woman he claimed he wanted to marry someday. Before I became a problem to solve. Before I became damaged goods. We'd been together for almost 4 years. Met during sophomore year of college when he spilled coffee on my psychology textbook in the campus library. He bought me a new copy the next day, along with coffee, to drink, not to wear, he'd joked. His easy charm, warm brown eyes, and the dimple that appeared in his left cheek when he genuinely smiled, not the calculated one he used for networking events, had pulled me in. 4 years of building a life together, meeting families, planning futures. Ethan came from money. Old money, the kind that whispered rather than shouted. The Bennett family was respected in our city. Philanthropists, business owners, pillars of the community with their carefully curated public image. His father, Richard, ran Bennett Investments with iron-fisted precision. His mother, Vivian, managed her charity foundation and family social calendar with equal military efficiency. They had 2 sons, Ethan, the golden child following his father's footsteps, and Michael, the younger brother who'd chosen to become a trauma surgeon rather than join the family business. I'd always felt the weight of their expectations, the sidelong glances assessing whether I was Bennett material. I wasn't from their world. My dad was a high school history teacher, my mom a nurse. We lived comfortably enough in a modest neighborhood across town. I'd earned my way into college on scholarships, worked part-time throughout my degree, and was now building a career as a children's counselor at a local nonprofit. It wasn't glamorous or lucrative, but it fulfilled me. "You do important work," Michael had said once at a family dinner, after Ethan had glossed over my job with vague mentions of helping kids. It was the first time someone in the Bennett family had actually engaged with what I did, rather than politely nodding before changing the subject. But that was before the night everything changed, before I became a version of myself that Ethan couldn't bear to look at. April 16th. I'd been working late, facilitating an evening support group for teens. Walking to my car in the dimly lit parking lot, keys threaded between my fingers as women are taught to do, scanning my surroundings as I'd been conditioned to. But it wasn't enough. I don't talk about the details of what happened. Not because I'm ashamed, though for a long time I was. I don't talk about it because those minutes don't get to define my story. They're part of it, yes, an unwanted, violent intrusion into my narrative, but they don't get the spotlight. What matters is that I survived. I fought. I screamed. A security guard from the building next door heard and came running. My attacker fled. I was hurt but alive. The hospital was a blur of bright lights, gentle-voiced nurses, police questions, and invasive exams. I remember staring at a small crack in the ceiling during the rape kit, focusing on that imperfection to ground myself as strangers documented the violations on my body. I called Ethan from the hospital. His voice, usually so composed, cracked when I told him what had happened. He came immediately, white-faced and shaken. He held my hand as we waited for my parents to arrive from across town. He said all the right things. "I'm here. We'll get through this. I love you." For the first few weeks, he was everything I needed. Patient, present. He brought food when I couldn't find the energy to cook. He held me through nightmares. He drove me to appointments with the detective handling my case and the therapist I started seeing. But as weeks turned into a month, then 2, something shifted. It was subtle at first. A slight stiffening when I reached for him. Conversations that ended when I entered a room. The increasing frequency of late nights at the office. "He's just processing," my best friend Jenna suggested when I confided my worries. Men sometimes take longer to deal with emotional stuff. I wanted to believe that. I did believe it, until the night I overheard him on the phone in our home office, thinking I was asleep. "I don't know, Dad. She's not getting better as quickly as the therapist said she might." A pause. "No, she still has nightmares. Jumps when someone approaches too quickly." Another pause. Of course I care about her, but this isn't what I signed up for. We had plans. His words hit me like physical blows. Plans. Like I'd inconveniently gotten the flu before a vacation, not been violently assaulted. Like my trauma was interfering with his carefully plotted life trajectory. I slipped back to our bedroom before he could discover me listening, my mind racing. Was I taking too long to heal? Was I becoming a burden? I spent that night staring at the ceiling, cataloging all the ways I might be failing at recovery, all the ways I might be letting Ethan down by not bouncing back fast enough. The next morning, I tried harder. I applied makeup to cover the shadows under my eyes from months of fractured sleep. I prepared his favorite breakfast. I kissed him like nothing was wrong, swallowing my hurt and fear. "You seem better today?" he said, genuinely smiling for the first time in weeks. That began my performance, my desperate daily theater of getting better, for Ethan's benefit. I stopped mentioning nightmares. I declined when he half-heartedly offered to accompany me to therapy. I forced myself to be physically intimate even when my body went rigid at his touch, detaching from the experience like I was floating somewhere near the ceiling, watching someone else go through the motions. For a while it seemed to work. Ethan relaxed. Our life regained some normalcy. He started talking about the future again, vacations, career moves, eventually starting a family. I nodded and smiled and buried the parts of me that were still screaming. Then came his law firm's annual gala, a black tie event I'd enjoyed in previous years, an excuse to dress up and sip champagne among Hartford's elite. This year, the thought of a crowd, of forced small talk and being on display, made my heart race. But it was important to Ethan. Partners would be there, career advancement opportunities. I couldn't let him down. I bought a new dress. Midnight blue, elegant but with a high neck and sleeves, covering the fading scars on my collarbone and arms. I practiced my social smile in the mirror. I rehearsed light, pleasant conversations in my head. "You look beautiful," Ethan said when I emerged from our bedroom, fully assembled like a doll in her packaging. The gala was at the Hartford Grand, all crystal chandeliers and old-world opulence. I clutched Ethan's arm as we entered, the din of conversation and clinking glasses immediately overwhelming. I focused on my breathing, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, like my therapist had taught me. "Ethan!" "There you are." Richard Bennett materialized before us, commanding in his custom tuxedo. "Judge Whitmore was just asking about you. Come, I'll introduce you properly." He barely glanced at me. "Allison, you don't mind if I borrow him, do you? Networking to be done." Before I could respond, Ethan was extracting himself from my grip. "I'll be right back," he promised, already pivoting toward his father's retreating back. I found a quiet corner near a large potted palm, nursing a single glass of champagne I had no intention of finishing. The alcohol would interact badly with my medication, but holding the glass gave me something to do with my hands and prevented well-meaning servers from constantly offering drinks. Hiding from the vultures, too? I startled, champagne sloshing dangerously close to the rim of my flute. Michael Bennett stood beside me, his own posture conveying the same desire for invisibility that I felt. Despite being in the same genetically blessed family as Ethan, Michael had always been the less polished brother. His dark hair was slightly too long for the conservative Bennett standard, his bow tie already slightly askew, though we were barely an hour into the event. "Social battery running low?" I admitted. "You? Never charged to begin with." He smiled, the expression warming his eyes, darker than Ethan's, almost black in certain lights. "These things are my personal nightmare. Too many people who want something from my family, too few who have anything genuine to say. I'd always found Michael easier to talk to than the rest of the Bennetts. He lacked the calculating social maneuvering that seemed bred into the others. In another life, where I hadn't met Ethan first, I might have, but that was a pointless train of thought. "How are you doing, Allie?" "Really?" he asked, his voice quieter. "Ethan mentioned you'd been through something difficult." Something cold settled in my stomach. "What exactly did he say?" Michael shifted uncomfortably. "Not much. Just that you'd had a traumatic experience and were working through it. He didn't share details, and I wouldn't ask you to either." The kindness in his voice nearly undid me after months of Ethan's increasingly thinly veiled impatience. I blinked rapidly, determined not to ruin my carefully applied makeup. "I'm surviving," I said finally. "Some days are harder than others." He nodded, offering neither platitudes nor advice. "Sometimes surviving is enough," he said. "The rest can come later." We stood in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching the social choreography of the gala unfold before us. I spotted Ethan across the room, laughing with a group that included the firm's senior partners. He hadn't looked that relaxed, that unguarded, with me in months. "I should probably circulate," I said reluctantly. "Ethan will be wondering where I am." Michael's eyes followed my gaze to his brother. Something crossed his face, a fleeting expression I couldn't quite identify. "Of course," he said. "But Allie, if you ever need someone to talk to who isn't directly involved, I'm a pretty good listener. Comes with the medical territory." I thanked him, touched by the offer even though I knew I'd never take him up on it. Navigating one Bennett man was complicated enough. I made my way through the crowd, smiling and exchanging pleasantries on autopilot. By the time I reached Ethan, my face ached from the effort. "There you are," he said too brightly, pulling me into the circle. "Everyone, you remember Allie?" The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. I felt myself fading, my carefully constructed facade beginning to crack. The room seemed too hot, the voices too loud, the eyes on me too invasive. "Excuse me," I murmured finally. "I just need a moment." I found refuge in a quiet hallway, leaning against the wall and closing my eyes. The cool surface against my back anchored me as I fought to regulate my breathing. "Is she okay?" A woman's voice just around the corner. I froze. "She's been through a lot." Ethan's voice. "It's been difficult." "The assault, you mean?" "God, that's awful." "How are you handling it?" My blood turned to ice. Ethan had told someone, not just family but a colleague, about my assault. Something I'd been intensely private about, sharing only with family and closest friends. "It's been challenging," Ethan replied, his voice lowering. "She's not the same person anymore. Jumpy, anxious. She used to be so confident, so vibrant." "That's understandable though, isn't it? After something like that?" A pause. "Of course, but it's been months. The therapist said she should be showing more improvement by now. Sometimes I wonder," he trailed off. "What?" the woman prompted. "If she'll ever really be herself again. The woman I fell in love with." I must have made a sound, a gasp or whimper, because they suddenly went silent. I pushed myself away from the wall, moving quickly back toward the main ballroom. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these people. I spotted Michael again, now talking with an older doctor I recognized from charity events. He saw me immediately, his brow furrowing with concern. I shook my head slightly, a silent plea not to draw attention to my state. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. I moved through conversations mechanically, laughed at appropriate moments, sipped water disguised as vodka soda. When we finally left, the silence in the car was deafening. "You disappeared for a while," Ethan said eventually. "I needed some air. Judge Whitmore was impressed with you. Said you were poised." I stared out the window. High praise. "Allie, did you tell everyone at your firm about what happened to me?" The words escaped before I could reconsider. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Of course not. Just Melissa. She's been concerned about why I've been distracted at work. She's a friend. A friend who now knows the most traumatic experience of my life without my permission. I needed someone to talk to about this. It affects me too, you know." I turned to stare at him, truly seeing him for perhaps the first time. "Affects you? Affects you? That's not what I meant. What did you mean then when you told her I might never be myself again? When you questioned if I'd ever be the woman you fell in love with?" He blanched. "You heard that." "Yes, Ethan, I heard that. Just like I heard you telling your father weeks ago that my trauma was interfering with your plans." He pulled into our driveway and shut off the engine, turning to face me. "That's not fair. I've been here for you every step of this. I've been patient, understanding. But it's been months, Allie, and you're still not better." "Not better?" I echoed, incredulous. "I was assaulted, violated. I'm not recovering from the flu." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean? Explain it to me, because I'm clearly too damaged to understand." He flinched at my use of the word but pushed forward. "I meant that you're still letting it control you. Letting him control you. You're still afraid all the time. You still won't go out alone after dark. You still have nightmares. You still tense up when I touch you." Each accusation landed like a blow. The worst part was that he wasn't wrong. I was still afraid. I did have nightmares. I did sometimes freeze when he initiated intimacy. But hearing him list these things as failings, as deficiencies I should have overcome by now, ignited something in me. "I'm sorry my healing timeline is inconvenient for you," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Perhaps you should have clarified your expectations earlier." for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, unless recovery takes longer than 3 months, in which case all bets are off. We're not even married, he snapped. The words hung between us, revealing far more than he'd intended. We'd talked about marriage for years. It had been a when, not an if, until now. No, I said softly. We're not. We went to bed in silence that night, as far apart on the mattress as possible without falling off. I stared at the ceiling, aching with a new kind of pain. The assault had broken my body temporarily, but this was breaking something deeper. The next few weeks were a slow-motion collapse. We moved around each other cautiously, speaking only when necessary, sleeping with a gulf between us. I started staying later at work. Ethan found reasons to go in early, come home late. We were two planets drifting apart, held in the weakest of orbits. I kept going to therapy, but now I was honest about what was happening at home. My therapist, Dr. Chen, listened without judgment as I poured out the truth, that the man I loved seemed to see me as diminished, as less than I had been before. Have you considered that this situation is showing you who he truly is? She asked gently during one session. What do you mean? Traumatic events don't just test the person who experiences them directly. They test everyone in that person's orbit. Some people rise to the occasion. Others reveal limitations you might not have seen otherwise. I thought about that for days afterward. Was this who Ethan had always been beneath the charm and the declarations of love? Someone who valued me for how I fit into his life, how I made him feel, rather than for myself? The question haunted me as spring turned to early summer, as my physical wounds healed completely while the invisible ones still throbbed. As Ethan's patience visibly wore thinner, then came the night of the ultimatum. I hadn't planned it. I'd been at a training workshop all day, learning new techniques for helping children process trauma through art therapy. The irony wasn't lost on me, becoming better equipped to help others while my own healing stalled. But the workshop had energized me. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of my old professional passion. I came home wanting to share this small victory, this glimpse of my former self that Ethan claimed to miss so desperately. He was in the kitchen making a sandwich when I walked in. "Hey," I said, "how was your day?" He looked surprised by the genuine interest in my voice. "Fine. Busy. The Hawthorne merger is getting complicated." "I had a good day too," I offered. The workshop was really informative. I think I might be able to implement some new approaches with my group kids. "That's great," he said automatically, then paused. "Actually, that is great, Allie. You sound like yourself." Something about the relief in his voice struck a discordant note. "I am myself," I said. "I've always been myself, even on the bad days." He set down his plate. "You know what I mean? Do I? The old you? Before," he gestured vaguely, unable or unwilling to name what had happened. "I was assaulted, Ethan." "You can say the word." "It happened to me, not you." He flinched. "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so defensive now, so quick to assume the worst. Am I assuming, though? Or am I finally seeing clearly?" The conversation deteriorated from there. All the resentments and hurts of the past months spilled out between us, his frustration at what he perceived as my stalled recovery, my anger at his impatience, his judgment, until finally, standing in our living room with his face flushed and fists clenched, he said the words that would change everything. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Allie. You're different now. Damaged goods." Time seemed to stop. I stared at him. This man I'd loved for 4 years. This man who had just revealed that he saw me as merchandise whose value had decreased. Not a person experiencing pain. Not a survivor finding her way back. Damaged goods. "Get out," I whispered. "Allie, get out!" I screamed it this time, a primal sound that tore from somewhere deep. "Get out of my apartment. Now." "This is my apartment too," he protested but weakly. "Not tonight, it isn't. I need you to leave. I need to think." To my surprise, he went, grabbed his keys and wallet, and walked out without another word. I sank to the floor after the door closed, tears flowing freely for the first time in weeks. Not gentle tears of sadness, but harsh, racking sobs of rage and grief. I cried for what felt like hours until my throat was raw and my eyes swollen. Then, emptied out, I sat in the silence of our apartment, an apartment that suddenly felt like a museum to a relationship that no longer existed. I pulled myself up eventually, moving to the bathroom on shaky legs. The face in the mirror was blotchy, eyes puffy, but something had changed. The woman looking back at me wasn't just sad or broken. She was angry, and beneath the anger, something else was stirring. something that felt dangerously close to purpose. Damaged goods. The words echoed, but now they fueled rather than destroyed. I showered, scrubbing my skin until it was pink, washing away tears and weakness. As I dried off, I caught another glimpse of myself in the mirror. The scars on my collarbone and shoulder were silvery now, fading but still visible. I traced one with my fingertip, reclaiming it. Mine. Part of my story, not the whole of it. I slept in the guest room that night, unable to face the bed I'd shared with Ethan. In the morning, I called in sick to work for the first time since returning after the assault. Then I made 3 phone calls, to my parents, to Jenna, and to a locksmith. By noon, the locks had been changed. By 3, I'd packed most of Ethan's clothes and essentials into suitcases. By 5, I'd called a lawyer friend for advice about the apartment lease, both our names were on it, and other practical matters. When Ethan came by that evening, his face a mask of contrition, ready with apologies and explanations, he found me calm and resolute. "Your things are packed," I said, gesturing to the suitcases in the entryway. "I've left out the basics. We can arrange for you to get the rest later." He stared, clearly having expected tears or a willingness to work things out. "Allie, about last night." "No." I held up a hand. "I don't want apologies. I don't want explanations. What I want is for you to be honest, if not with me, then at least with yourself. Can you honestly say you still want this relationship? Not the relationship we had before, but the one we would have now, with me as I am?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. His silence was answer enough. "That's what I thought," I said quietly. "I deserve better than someone who sees me as damaged, who resents me for not healing on his timetable." "I don't think you're damaged," he protested but weakly. I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. "No, Ethan, you said exactly what you meant. You just didn't expect to be held accountable for it." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. "So that's it? 4 years over because of one bad fight? This isn't about one fight. This is about who you've shown yourself to be over the past 3 months. When things got hard, not for you, but for me, you couldn't handle it. You made my trauma about you. That's not fair. Life isn't fair." I cut him off. "I learned that in the most brutal way possible. But what happens next, how I rebuild, that's on my terms. And I refuse to build a life with someone who sees me as less than whole." He looked genuinely stricken then, perhaps realizing for the first time that he might actually lose me. "I love you," he said, his voice cracking. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I stood firm. "I believe you do in your way, but it's not enough. Not anymore." After he left, taking his suitcases and shattered expectations with him, I sat alone in the suddenly quieter apartment. There was pain, yes. The end of a 4-year relationship couldn't happen without pain. But beneath it, something else was growing. Something that felt surprisingly like freedom. The next few weeks passed in a blur of practical matters. Ethan and I communicated primarily through texts and emails, arranging times for him to collect the rest of his things. I found a smaller apartment I could afford on my own. I threw myself into work, finding that helping others through their trauma gave purpose to my own. I expected the Bennett family to close ranks around Ethan, to excise me from their world completely. For the most part, they did. Richard and Vivian sent a coolly polite email expressing regret about the situation and hopes that I would find peace. Classic Bennett diplomacy, technically appropriate while conveying nothing genuine. What I didn't expect was the text from Michael 3 weeks after the breakup. "Heard what happened. No details needed. Checking if you're okay. Coffee sometime if you want to talk. Or not talk. Whatever helps." I stared at the message for a long time, unsure how to respond. Was this a Bennett family reconnaissance mission? A genuine gesture? After days of deliberation, I sent back a simple, "Coffee would be nice. Thanks." We met at a small cafe far from Ethan's office and the Bennett family's usual haunts. Michael arrived in scrubs, coming straight from a hospital shift. "Sorry about this," he said, gesturing to his attire. "Emergency surgery ran long. Saving lives trumps dress codes," I replied, surprising myself with the ease in my voice. He smiled, ordered coffee for both of us, then sat back in his chair. So, I echoed. "I'm not here to spy for Ethan," he said abruptly. "Just to be clear, I wasn't sure. He doesn't know I'm meeting you, and I'm not going to tell him." I raised an eyebrow. "Bennett family disloyalty? I'm shocked." A corner of his mouth quirked up. "Black sheep status has its perks. I get to make my own decisions about who I associate with." We sipped our coffee in surprisingly comfortable silence for a moment. "He really screwed up, didn't he?" Michael finally asked. I tensed. I don't think I want to discuss the details of our breakup, and I wouldn't ask you to, he assured me quickly. I just meant, I know my brother. I know the family we come from. We're not taught to handle other people's pain well. It makes us uncomfortable, especially pain we can't fix with money or influence. The insight startled me. It was more self-awareness than I'd ever heard from Ethan. He told you what happened to me? The assault? Michael nodded slowly. The basic fact, yes. No details. And only after you'd broken up, when he was trying to explain why. For what it's worth, I think he regrets how he handled everything. Regret isn't the same as understanding, I said quietly. He never really saw me as a whole person walking through trauma. He saw me as a problem to be fixed, and when I couldn't be fixed quickly enough, I trailed off. Damaged goods? Michael supplied, his expression darkening. Yeah, Mom mentioned he'd use that phrase. I nearly put my fist through his face when I heard. The fierce protectiveness in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the polished Bennett diplomacy I was accustomed to. This was something rawer, more genuine. Thank you, I said simply, for seeing why that was wrong. Anyone with basic human decency would see it, he replied, then winced. Sorry, that was unfair to Ethan. He's not a bad person. He struggled for words. Product of his environment? I suggested. Something like that. The perfect Bennett son, following the perfect Bennett path. Deviations aren't tolerated well. We talked for nearly 2 hours, skipping entirely over small talk to discuss surprisingly deep topics. His work as a trauma surgeon, my counseling with children, the challenges of existing in the Bennett orbit with different values and priorities. I should let you go, he said eventually, noticing the time. You probably have plans. I didn't, actually. My social circle had contracted significantly post-breakup, with many mutual friends awkwardly drifting toward Ethan, but I nodded anyway, gathering my purse. This was nice, I said, meaning it. Thank you for checking on me. I wasn't just being polite about doing it again, he said, uncharacteristic uncertainty in his voice. Not if that would be weird for you, given everything. I considered him, this Bennett who seemed so different from the others, who spoke with refreshing directness, who had reached out when he had nothing to gain. It wouldn't be weird, I said finally. I could use a friend these days. The relief in his smile told me he'd been genuinely worried I'd say no. Great. Friends then. As I walked home, I reflected on the strange twist life had taken. 3 months ago, I'd been Ethan Bennett's girlfriend, navigating the aftermath of trauma while trying desperately to be who he needed. Now I was, what? Just Allie Matthews, trauma survivor, children's counselor, woman reclaiming her life on her own terms, and perhaps tentative friend to the brother of the man who had deemed me unworthy of patience. Life's little ironies. The next few months unfolded in unexpected ways. I settled into my new apartment, smaller but cozier, decorated exactly as I wanted without compromising for Ethan's more minimalist preferences. I took a promotion at work, heading up a new program for children who had experienced similar traumas to mine. I continued therapy, but the focus shifted from crisis management to deeper healing and growth. And surprisingly, my friendship with Michael developed. We met for coffee every couple of weeks, then added occasional dinners, movies, hikes when our schedules aligned. He was easy to be around, direct without being harsh, funny without being cruel, attentive without being smothering. I learned that beneath his easygoing exterior was a mind as sharp as any in the Bennett family, but directed toward helping rather than accumulating. I heard stories about growing up as the disappointing second son, about fighting to forge his own path against his father's expectations. He learned about my childhood, my passion for helping children, my gradual journey toward reclaiming my sense of safety in the world. We carefully avoided detailed discussions of Ethan, an unspoken agreement that seemed to work for both of us. But Ethan remained a shadow presence in our interactions, the reason we knew each other, the complication neither of us quite knew how to address. 6 months after my breakup with Ethan, the inevitable happened. We were bound to cross paths eventually in a city the size of Hartford, especially given his family's social prominence. I just hadn't expected it to happen at the annual fundraiser for the Children's Hospital where I occasionally consulted. I was standing with a group of colleagues when I saw him across the room, immaculate in a charcoal suit, deep in conversation with a hospital board member. My heart gave a single painful thud of recognition before settling. He looked the same, yet somehow like a stranger. Someone I had once known intimately, but now couldn't quite recall why. "You okay?" whispered Jenna, who had come as my +1. She followed my gaze and stiffened. "We can leave if you want." I shook my head. "No need. I'm fine." And I was, surprisingly. The sight of him didn't devastate me as it might have months earlier. There was a dull ache of what might have been, but no shattering regret. Then Ethan turned slightly and saw me. Our eyes met across the crowded room in a moment so cliched I almost laughed. He froze, then nodded slightly in acknowledgement. I returned the gesture and turned back to my conversation, refusing to give him more of my attention than that brief acknowledgement. 10 minutes later, I felt a presence at my elbow. I knew without looking who it was. "Allie," Ethan said, his voice formal. "You look well." I turned, taking in the familiar features that now seemed to belong to someone from a past life. "Thank you." "So do you." An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. "I heard you got the promotion," he said finally. "Congratulations." "Thank you." "How's the Hawthorne merger?" "Completed last month. Successfully." Another pause, more strained than the first. "Allie, I've been wanting to tell you—" "Ethan." I cut him off gently. "We don't need to do this. Not here, not now." "Do what?" "The post-breakup closure conversation. The apologies or explanations or whatever you were about to offer." He looked taken aback. "I just thought, I know, and I appreciate the intention, but I'm good, Ethan. Really. I've made peace with how things ended." He studied me, something like wonder crossing his face. "You really have changed." I smiled slightly. "Not changed. Healed. On my own timeline." Before he could respond, there was a commotion near the entrance. Michael appeared, looking somewhat harried in a slightly rumpled tuxedo, his bow tie already askew. "Sorry I'm late," he called to someone near the door. "Emergency surgery?" My heart gave a treacherous leap at the sight of him. We hadn't discussed whether we'd both be attending this event, though in retrospect it seemed obvious that the Bennett family would be represented at such a prominent charity function. Ethan followed my gaze, his expression shifting from surprise to confusion to something harder. "You and Michael?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "We're friends," I said simply. It was true, if perhaps not the whole truth. If pressed, I couldn't have articulated exactly what Michael and I were to each other. More than casual acquaintances, less than whatever might come next. "Friends?" Ethan repeated, skepticism evident. "Yes, Ethan. Friends. People can be that, you know." He had the grace to look chastened. "Of course. I just didn't expect it. Life is full of surprises." I touched his arm briefly, a peace offering of sorts. "I should get back to my colleagues. Take care of yourself, Ethan." I walked away before he could respond, feeling strangely light. The encounter I had dreaded for months had come and gone, leaving me intact. More than intact, affirmed. I had faced my past and found it held no power over me anymore. Michael spotted me a few minutes later, his face lighting up in a way that made something warm unfurl in my chest. "You didn't tell me you'd be here," he said, reaching us. "Hospital consultant, remember?" Kind of obligatory. "Ah, right." He greeted Jenna warmly, then turned back to me. "I just saw Ethan." "Did you—" We spoke briefly. Civilized adult conversation. The world didn't end. He searched my face, concern evident. "You're okay?" "I'm fine," I assured him, touched by his worry. "Really?" The evening continued pleasantly after that. I mingled with colleagues, chatted with donors, even danced a few songs when the band started playing. Michael drifted in and out of my orbit, sometimes deep in conversation with hospital staff about cases or equipment needs, sometimes appearing at my side with a fresh drink or a wry comment about the more pretentious guests. I caught Ethan watching us once or twice, his expression unreadable. The old me might have worried about what he was thinking, might have second-guessed my every interaction with Michael. The new me, or rather, the real me, emerging from beneath layers of trauma and people-pleasing, simply didn't have the energy to care. "Ready to call it a night?" Michael asked around 11, finding me stifling a yawn near the dessert table. "More than ready. These heels were a mistake." He grinned. "Worth it, though. You look incredible." The compliment warmed me more than it should have. "Flattery will get you everywhere, Bennett." "I hope so," he murmured so quietly I wasn't sure I was meant to hear. Outside, the night air was crisp with early autumn. Michael insisted on walking me to my car, though the parking garage was well lit and secured. "Old habits," he said when I pointed this out. "Mom drilled chivalry into us from birth." Ah yes, the famous Bennett manners. Some lessons stuck better than others. He winced slightly. "Touché." We reached my car, but neither of us moved to end the evening. There was a tension in the air, a sense of standing on a precipice. "So," I said. "So," he echoed, an echo of our first coffee months ago. "I saw Ethan watching us tonight." Michael stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Does that bother you?" "No," I said truthfully. "Does it bother you?" He considered the question seriously. "Not for my sake. For yours, maybe. I don't want to complicate your healing." The thoughtfulness of his response made my chest ache. "My healing isn't as fragile as all that." "No, it isn't, is it?" He smiled, a soft, private thing. "You're the strongest person I know, Allie Matthews." "Flatterer?" I accused again, but softly. "Just observant?" We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken possibilities between us. "Michael," I started, unsure what I even wanted to say. "We don't have to figure everything out tonight," he said gently. "We've got time." Relief flooded me. He understood without me having to explain that I was interested, attracted, but also cautious. That the shadow of Ethan complicated things in ways we'd need to navigate carefully. "Thank you," I said simply. He brushed a strand of hair from my face, the gesture achingly tender. "Get home safe. Text me when you're in." I watched him walk away, conflicting emotions swirling, excitement, trepidation, and underlying it all, a quiet certainty that whatever was developing between us was worth exploring, complications and all. The next morning, I woke to a text from Ethan, the first direct communication we'd had in months. "Can we meet? Need to talk." "Important." I stared at the message, conflicted. I had meant what I said the night before. I didn't need a closure conversation. But perhaps Ethan did. And despite everything, I didn't wish him ill. If talking would help him move forward, I could give him that much. We arranged to meet at a neutral coffee shop the following day. I arrived first, claiming a table in the corner that offered some privacy. Ethan appeared exactly on time, impeccably dressed as always in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He looked tired, though, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that expensive clothes couldn't disguise. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sitting down with the coffee I'd already ordered for him. Dark roast, no room for cream. Some habits died hard. "Of course. What's up?" He fiddled with his cup, uncharacteristically hesitant. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since we broke up. A lot of reassessment." I nodded, waiting. "The thing is, Allie, I was wrong. About everything. About how I handled your assault. About what I expected from you. About what I said that night." "Ethan, please let me finish. I need to say this." He took a deep breath. "I was selfish and impatient. I made your trauma about me, about how it inconvenienced me, how it disrupted my plans. I didn't support you the way you deserved." I sat very still, surprised by the self-awareness in his words. This didn't sound like the Ethan I knew, who deflected responsibility and reframed situations to put himself in the best light. "I've been seeing someone," he continued. "A therapist, I mean. Trying to understand why I reacted the way I did, why I couldn't be what you needed." "That's good, Ethan. I'm glad. The thing is, Allie, I still love you." I never stopped. "And seeing you last night, seeing how well you're doing, how strong you've become, it made me realize what I threw away." Ah, there it was. "The real purpose of this meeting." "Ethan," I said gently, "we can't go back. I know things would be different. I'm different. I've changed, done the work. It's not about that. It's not even about forgiveness. I do forgive you genuinely. But some things, once broken, can't be put back together the same way." He looked stricken. "Is this about Michael?" I sighed. "No, not really. Though I won't pretend there isn't something developing there. My brother," he said, a flash of the old Ethan showing through. "Of all people. This isn't about him or you or your family dynamics. It's about me. What I need, what I want for my life going forward. And that isn't me." "No," I said as kindly as possible. "It isn't." He absorbed this, conflict playing across his features. For a moment I thought he might argue, might try to persuade me. The old Ethan would have. This new version, however, simply nodded. "I understand. I don't like it, but I understand." He managed a rueful smile. "He's a better man than me anyway." "Different," I corrected. "Not better, just different. And maybe more what I need now." We finished our coffee in surprisingly companionable silence. As we prepared to leave, Ethan hesitated. "For what it's worth, Allie, I am sorry. For all of it, but especially for what I said that night. You were never damaged goods. The damage was in how I saw you, not in who you are." The words touched something deep in me, a wound I hadn't realized still needed healing. "Thank you for saying that." Outside, we parted with an awkward half-hug. As I watched him walk away, I felt a chapter of my life definitively closing, not with bitterness or regret, but with a quiet acknowledgement of what had been, what had broken, and what had been learned in the breaking. The conversation with Ethan left me thoughtful. For months, I had focused on healing from both the assault and the subsequent betrayal. I had reclaimed my sense of safety, my confidence, my joy in living. But I had been so careful with my heart, keeping it protected behind walls of caution. Michael had slipped past those defenses gradually, so subtly I hardly noticed until he was already there, in my thoughts, in my daily routines, in the future I was beginning to imagine. The question now was whether I was ready to take the risk, to be vulnerable again, to trust not just him but myself to choose better this time. I spent the day walking through my neighborhood thinking. By evening I had my answer. I texted Michael, "Dinner tomorrow? My place. I'll cook." His response came almost immediately. "You had me at dinner. What can I bring?" "Just yourself," I replied. 7 p.m. I spent the next day in a flurry of preparation, cleaning my apartment, shopping for ingredients, planning a menu that was impressive but not trying too hard. By 6:30, everything was ready. A simple but elegant meal of roasted chicken, fingerling potatoes, and asparagus. A good bottle of wine breathing on the counter, soft music playing in the background. I changed 3 times before settling on a casual emerald green dress that made my eyes look greener and complemented my now shorter hair. I had cut it a month after the breakup, tired of seeing the woman who had tried so hard to be what Ethan needed staring back at me in the mirror. Michael arrived precisely at 7, a small bouquet of wildflowers in hand. "These reminded me of you," he said, beautiful but not overly cultivated. I laughed, genuinely delighted by both the gesture and the description. "I'll take that as a compliment. It was meant as one." He handed me the flowers, then produced a bottle of wine from behind his back. "I know you said just myself, but I was raised by Vivian Bennett. Showing up empty-handed is literally not in my DNA." Dinner was relaxed, comfortable, the easy conversation of 2 people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. We talked about his latest difficult case, my new program at work, a book we'd both recently read. Normal, ordinary topics that felt extraordinary simply because of who I was sharing them with. After dinner, we moved to the couch with our wine. The subtle shift in atmosphere was palpable, a new awareness, a heightened tension. "I had coffee with Ethan yesterday," I said, deciding directness was best. "He asked to meet." Michael tensed slightly. "I see. How did that go?" "Better than expected." He apologized properly this time. Said he's been in therapy, working through his issues. "That's surprising." "Good, but surprising." "That's what I thought too." Michael studied his wine glass. "Did he want to get back together?" "Yes," I said simply. I said no. He looked up at that, something vulnerable in his eyes. Because that chapter is closed," I said. "But also, yes, partly because of this. Us. Whatever is happening here." He set his glass down carefully. "And what is happening here, Allie? From your perspective." I took a deep breath. "Something unexpected. Something complicated given our history. Something that scares me if I'm being honest." "Scares you how?" I trusted Ethan. Completely. I believed he saw me, really saw me, and accepted all of me. I was wrong, and the pain of that. It makes trusting again difficult. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I can imagine, but I'm also tired of letting fear make my decisions." I continued. "I've spent months reclaiming every other part of my life, my sense of safety, my work, my home. The only thing I've held back is my heart." "Allie," he said softly, reaching for my hand. "I would never—" "I know," I interrupted. "That's just it. I do know, not because you've promised or because I'm naive, but because I've watched you, Michael. I've seen who you are when you think no one's looking, how you treat people who can do nothing for you, how you listen, really listen when I talk." His fingers tightened around mine. "For what it's worth, I'm scared too." This surprised me. "You are?" "Of course. You're my brother's ex. My family will have opinions, none of them positive. There's potential for spectacular messiness here." He smiled wryly. "But mostly I'm scared because this matters. You matter. And I don't want to screw it up." The simple honesty in his words touched me deeply. This was the fundamental difference between the brothers, not just in how they handled my trauma, but in how they moved through the world. Ethan calculated, Michael connected. "So what do we do?" I asked. "What do you want to do?" I considered the question seriously. "I want to see where this goes. slowly, carefully, with eyes wide open. I want to trust my instincts again, and they're telling me you're worth the risk. His smile then was like sunrise, gradual, warming, transforming. Slow and careful sounds perfect. We've got nothing but time. He leaned forward, telegraphing his intent, giving me every opportunity to pull back. I met him halfway instead. Our first kiss was gentle, questioning, a conversation rather than a declaration. When we separated, the look in his eyes, wonder mixed with something deeper, made my breath catch. "Stay for a while?" I asked. "Just to talk. I'm not quite ready for the evening to end." "I'll stay as long as you want me to," he said simply. We talked late into the night, curled together on my couch, sharing stories and dreams and fears. At some point, I drifted off against his shoulder, more relaxed than I'd been in months. I woke briefly as he carried me to my bed, his movements careful and respectful. "I should go," he whispered, brushing hair from my face. "You could stay," I murmured sleepily, just to sleep. "If you wanted," he hesitated, then smiled. "Next time? When we're both fully awake to make that decision?" The care in his boundary setting, his refusal to rush even with permission granted, confirmed everything I had come to believe about him. As he left with a gentle kiss to my forehead, I fell back asleep with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in longer than I could remember. The next months unfolded like a novel I couldn't put down, each chapter revealing new aspects of Michael, of myself, of us together. We took things slowly as promised, building a foundation of friendship even as the romantic aspect of our relationship developed. He was patient with my occasional flashbacks, my moments of irrational fear. I was understanding of his grueling schedule, the emergencies that interrupted plans, the emotional toll his work sometimes took. We kept our relationship private at first, not out of shame but out of respect for the complexity of the situation. When we finally told people, first my parents, then his mother, his father having little interest in his younger son's personal life, then close friends, the reactions were mixed. My parents were cautiously supportive once they understood the timeline. My friends were protective but willing to trust my judgment. Michael's mother was coldly civil, clearly viewing the situation as some sort of betrayal of Ethan, though she was too well-bred to say so directly. Ethan himself found out eventually, of course. Hartford's social circles were too interconnected for secrets to last long. He called Michael, a tense conversation I wasn't privy to, but that left Michael drained and quiet for an evening. Whatever was said, it didn't drive a permanent wedge between the brothers. They maintained their previous relationship, not particularly close but civil, connected by blood and shared history if not by temperament or values. A year after the gala where Ethan and I had our first post-breakup conversation, Michael took me to dinner at a small Italian restaurant we'd discovered together. He seemed nervous, fiddling with his water glass, starting sentences and abandoning them. "Everything okay?" I asked, concerned. "Bad day at the hospital." "What?" No. Everything's fine." "Great, actually." He took a deep breath. "Allie, I've been thinking a lot about us. About this past year." My heart gave a treacherous flutter. "Oh?" "When we started this, I promised we'd take it slow. Be careful." "And we have been." He reached across the table for my hand. "But I've known for months now, maybe from the beginning if I'm honest, where I want this to go." He slid out of his chair, dropping to one knee beside our table. A small velvet box appeared in his hand. "Allie Matthews, I love you. Every part of you. Your strength, your compassion, your occasionally terrifying ability to call me on my bullshit." I laughed through sudden tears as he continued. "I want to build a life with you, grow old with you, face whatever comes next, good or bad, together. Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a ring that couldn't have been more different from what I imagined Ethan would have chosen. Not a traditional diamond solitaire, but a unique emerald surrounded by smaller stones, vintage and distinctive. "It was my grandmother's," he explained. "The black sheep before me. She'd have loved you." "Michael," I breathed, overwhelmed by the moment, by the journey that had led us here. "Yes." "Of course, yes." He slid the ring onto my finger with slightly shaking hands, then pulled me into a kiss that held both passion and promise. The restaurant erupted in applause, a fact I registered only distantly, too caught up in the miracle of this moment, this man, this future unfurling before us. Later that night, lying in the quiet darkness of what had become our bedroom, he had moved in 3 months earlier, Michael traced patterns on my bare shoulder. "Penny for your thoughts." he murmured. I was thinking about paths, I said softly. How the worst day of my life eventually led me here, to the best parts of my life. How if Ethan had been different, been better that day, I might never have found you, or rather found us. Do you regret it? Any of it? I considered the question seriously. The assault? Yes, always. No one should have to experience that. But the rest? Ethan's reaction, our breakup, the painful rebuilding? No, I can't regret what shaped me, what led me to you. He pulled me closer. For what it's worth, I would take it all away if I could, the pain, the trauma, even if it meant we never found each other. I know, I said, and I did. That was the essential difference. Michael would sacrifice his own happiness for mine without hesitation. Ethan had ultimately put his comfort above my healing. But we don't get those choices. We just get to decide what to build from what life gives us. And what are we building, future doctor? Bennett? He asked, lightening the mood. I had started a doctorate program in psychology, specializing in trauma recovery. Something beautiful, I said simply. Something true. 2 months later, I ran into Ethan at his mother's charity luncheon, an event I had been invited to as Michael's fiancée, a fact that spoke volumes about Vivian Bennett's ability to adapt to social realities regardless of her private feelings. Ethan spotted my ring immediately, his expression flickering before settling into something like resignation. Congratulations, he said, and seemed to mean it. Michael's a lucky man. We both are, I replied, lucky to have found each other. He nodded, something wistful crossing his face. I'm seeing someone new. Jessica. She works in environmental law. She challenges me. Makes me better. I'm glad, Ethan, I said sincerely. You deserve happiness too. We chatted for a few more minutes, the conversation easier than I would have expected. As we prepared to part ways, he hesitated. Allie, I know I've said this before, but I truly am sorry for how I handled everything. For what I said that night? I know, I said softly. I forgave you a long time ago, Ethan. Thank you for that. But more importantly, I'm glad you didn't believe me about being damaged goods. I'm glad you knew better. I thought about the journey of the past 18 months, the pain, the healing, the rebuilding, the unexpected joy I'd found with Michael, about the woman I'd become, stronger and more authentic than the one Ethan had known. I didn't know better, not at first, I admitted. For a while I believed you, but then I decided to find out for myself. And it turns out we're all damaged in some way, all imperfect, all healing from something. I smiled slightly. The trick is finding someone who sees your scars as part of your strength, not something to overlook or fix. Understanding dawned in his eyes, not just about Michael and me, but perhaps about himself, about what he needed in a partner, about the man he was still becoming. I think I'm starting to learn that, he said. Good, I replied simply. That's good. As I walked away to find Michael across the room, I felt the final pieces of my past settling into place. Not forgotten, never that, but integrated. Part of my story, but no longer its defining chapter. Michael looked up as I approached, his face lighting with the smile that still made my heart skip. Everything okay? He asked, nodding toward where Ethan stood. Everything's perfect, I said, taking his hand, feeling the steady warmth of it in mine. Absolutely perfect. And in that moment, watching understanding and love dawn in his eyes, it truly was. We've been engaged for almost 8 months now, and sometimes I still catch myself staring at the emerald ring on my finger with a sense of wonder. Not just at its beauty, though the vintage setting and deep green stone never fail to captivate me, but at the journey that brought it to my hand, at the unlikely path that led me from one Bennett brother to another. From heartbreak to healing to a love deeper than I'd known was possible. You're doing it again, Michael says, his voice warm with amusement as he catches me twisting the ring, a habit I've developed when lost in thought. We're in our kitchen on a rare shared morning off. His hospital schedule and my doctoral program combined with counseling work make these lazy Sundays precious. He's making pancakes, sleeves pushed up to reveal forearms dusted with dark hair, a smudge of flour on his cheek that I haven't mentioned because it's endearingly incongruous on a man who regularly performs life-saving surgeries. Doing what? I ask innocently, though I know exactly what he means. That thing where you look at your ring like it might disappear if you stop watching it. He slides a perfect pancake onto a waiting plate. 2 years together and you still seem surprised sometimes. Not surprised, I correct, moving to wrap my arms around him from behind, pressing my cheek between his shoulder blades. Grateful. There's a difference. He turns in my embrace, spatula still in hand, his expression softening. I'm the grateful one, Allie Matthews, soon to be Bennett. Just Matthews Bennett, I remind him. We agreed, remember? Right. Doctor? And Doctor. Matthews Bennett. Very modern of us. I rise on tiptoes to kiss the flower smudge from his cheek. Very practical. I've already published under Matthews. And this way, your patients won't get confused when they're referred to doctor. Bennett and a woman shows up. He laughs, turning back to the stove. As if anyone could ever confuse you with anyone else. The comfort of this moment, domesticity wrapped around us like a favorite blanket, still feels like a minor miracle sometimes. Not because I didn't believe I deserved happiness after everything that happened, but because finding it with Michael, of all people, remains the universe's most unexpected gift. Our wedding is 3 weeks away, a relatively small affair by Bennett standards, but still more elaborate than I would have chosen if left entirely to my own devices. In truth, it's been a delicate balancing act, honoring Michael's family traditions without losing ourselves in the process. Mom called while you were in the shower, Michael says casually, sliding the last pancake onto the stack. Wanted to remind us about the final tasting at the club on Tuesday. I suppress a sigh. The Hartford Country Club, founded sometime in the Paleolithic era and catering exclusively to families whose names appear in the social register, had not been my first choice of venue. But Vivian Bennett had looked so genuinely wounded when we gently suggested alternatives that we'd eventually capitulated. Did you remind her that I have class until 6 on Tuesdays? I ask, reaching for the maple syrup, the real stuff from Vermont, that Michael insists is the only acceptable pancake topping. I did. She's pushed it to 7. And before you say it's too late, remember that the alternative was her choosing everything herself and surprising us. I shudder at the thought. Vivian's taste runs to ice sculptures and champagne fountains, a far cry from the warm, intimate celebration we'd envisioned. 7 it is, I concede. Though I maintain that eloping had merit. Michael grins as he joins me at the table. You know my mother would have hunted us down. Probably hired private investigators. We'd have had to assume new identities, move to Montana, raise sheep. You make it sound like a terrible option. I look good in plaid, Bennett. His expression turns heated. That you do, Matthews. We eat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the Sunday morning sun streaming through the windows of our apartment. It's not the sprawling penthouse his parents expected him to choose, nor the sterile modern condo that Ethan occupies downtown. Instead, it's a pre-war building with high ceilings, crown molding, and windows that let in extraordinary light, perfect for my small collection of houseplants that Michael dutifully helps keep alive. You're still worried about the dinner Friday? Michael asks perceptively, catching the slight furrow in my brow that appears whenever I think about our upcoming rehearsal dinner. Not worried. I hedge. Just mentally preparing. He reaches for my hand. Mom will behave. Dad will be his usual distant self but won't cause problems. And Ethan? Well, Ethan confirmed he's bringing Jessica. This last piece of information is both reassuring and complicated. Ethan and Jessica have been dating for about 6 months now, long enough that her presence makes sense, yet new enough that it adds another layer of potential awkwardness to an already delicate situation. That's good, I say, meaning it. I like Jessica. And I do. The few times we've met, she's been warm, wickedly smart, and seemingly good for Ethan. She challenges him in ways I never could, refuses to be impressed by the Bennett name or fortune. I'm not worried about Ethan, really. We've reached a good place. Then what is it? I sigh, setting down my fork. It's just the wholeness of it. Your family, my family, our friends, everyone who matters to us in one room, with this complex history humming beneath the surface. Your mother trying not to visibly wince when my dad talks about his students or my mom discusses her nursing work. Your father checking his watch every 10 minutes as if he has someplace more important to be. Jenna watching Ethan like a hawk because she still hasn't fully forgiven him for what he said to me that night. It's a lot of emotional currents to navigate. Michael listens without interrupting. One of his greatest gifts, this ability to truly hear me. We don't have to do any of it a certain way, you know, he says finally. The rehearsal dinner, the wedding? It's all just window dressing. What matters is us. The life we're building. If the traditional Bennett production is causing you stress, we can still change course. The offer is so genuine, so typical of Michael's willingness to prioritize my comfort over family expectations, that it fills me with renewed certainty. No, I say, squeezing his hand. I want to do this. All of it. The big family dinner, the wedding at the club, the whole Bennett experience, but with our twist on it. Because it matters to you, and because I refuse to start our marriage by hiding from complexity. His smile is slow and sweet. Have I mentioned lately that I love you? And that you're the strongest person I know? You might have said something along those lines, I tease. But I never tire of hearing it. He leans across the table to kiss me, a gesture that starts gentle but quickly deepens. By the time we come up for air, the pancakes are forgotten, and the morning has taken a decidedly more interesting turn. Later, tangled in our sheets with sunlight painting patterns across our skin, I trace the line of Michael's collarbone and marvel again at how different he is from his brother. Not just physically, though there are differences there too. Michael slightly taller, his features more angular, his body shaped by years of standing for long surgeries rather than sitting behind desks, but essentially, in the core of who he is. "What are you thinking?" he murmurs, eyes half closed with contentment. "That I'm lucky," I say simply. "That sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead us to the best, if we're brave enough to keep moving forward." He pulls me closer, pressing a kiss to my temple. "Brave is exactly what you are, Allie Matthews. Though I prefer to think it was my irresistible charm rather than just blind luck that brought us together." I laugh, the sound muffled against his chest. "That too," I concede. "That too." The week leading up to our wedding is a whirlwind of final details, last-minute crises, and family dynamics that would give a therapist enough material for a decade of research. I navigate it all with a combination of deep breathing, Michael's steadying presence, and the perspective that comes from having survived far worse than wedding planning stress. Tuesday's menu tasting goes surprisingly well, with Vivian unusually receptive to our preferences. She only argues mildly when we reject the foie gras appetizer in favor of something less controversial, and actually sides with me when Michael suggests substituting the planned chocolate ganache cake for carrot cake. "Absolutely not," she says firmly. "Carrot cake is for casual brunches, not Bennett weddings." "Thank you, Vivian," I say, hiding my amusement at Michael's betrayed expression. "The chocolate ganache is perfect as planned." She looks momentarily startled by my agreement, then nods. "It will complement the emerald color scheme beautifully." A pause. "You have excellent taste in some matters, Allison." Coming from Vivian Bennett, this is practically effusive praise. I accept it with a gracious nod, ignoring Michael's impressed look. After 2 years, I've learned that navigating Vivian requires knowing which battles to fight and which to concede. A skill I suspect Jessica is also developing, based on the increasingly smooth interactions I've observed between her and the Bennett matriarch. Wednesday brings a minor disaster when the florist calls to say the specific shade of green orchid I'd chosen for my bouquet is unavailable due to a shipping issue from Thailand. I spend an hour on the phone negotiating alternatives, finally settling on a combination that will work with the bridesmaids' dresses without clashing with the venue's decor. Crisis averted? Michael asks when I collapse next to him on the couch that evening, exhausted from a full day of doctoral classes followed by the flower emergency. Barely. Your mother sent 15 pictures of potential replacements within 10 minutes of the florist calling her. I'm convinced she has spies everywhere. He laughs, pulling me against his side. She definitely does. Bennett family tradition. I'm pretty sure she had a dossier compiled on you within 24 hours of Ethan first mentioning your name. That's not as funny as you think it is. I grumble, though without heat. Sorry, he says, kissing the top of my head. If it helps, I'm sure your file was highly complimentary. Subject displays excellent academic credentials and appropriate social graces. Lineage unremarkable but not disqualifying. I elbow him gently in the ribs. You're terrible. And probably right. Thursday brings my parents' arrival from their retirement community in Rhode Island, where they'd moved the previous year. My father, his hair now more white than gray but his eyes still bright with intellectual curiosity, engulfs me in a bear hug the moment he steps through our door. "There's my girl," he says, his voice gruff with emotion. "Almost a married woman." My mother follows, elegant in her simple way, her nurse's eyes missing nothing as she scans me from head to toe. "You look tired, sweetheart. Are you sleeping enough? Taking your vitamins?" "I'm fine, Mom," I assure her, leaning into her embrace. "Just the usual pre-wedding chaos." Michael greets them warmly, helping my father with the luggage while I show my mother around our apartment. Though they've visited before, there's something different about this time. A sense of finality, of transition. After this weekend, I won't just be their daughter, I'll be someone's wife. A hyphenated Bennett, part of another family while still belonging to my own. The place looks lovely, my mother says, running an appreciative hand over the bookshelf Michael built for my growing collection of psychology texts and literary fiction. You've made a real home here. We have. I agree. It suits us. She studies me, her expression softening. You're happy. Truly happy. It's not a question, but I answer anyway. I am, Mom. More than I thought possible after everything. She nods, understanding in her eyes. My parents had been devastated after my assault, their pain compounded by Ethan's eventual rejection. They'd supported me fiercely through recovery and rebuilding, and had been understandably wary when I first told them about Michael. The Bennett name had not inspired confidence after their experience with Ethan, but Michael had won them over with his authenticity, his obvious devotion, and his complete lack of pretension despite his privileged background. My father particularly appreciated Michael's quick mind and genuine interest in history and politics. My mother, ever practical, had been impressed by his willingness to help with dishes after dinner, something Ethan had never once offered to do. I wasn't sure at first, she admits now, lowering her voice though we're alone in the guest room. When you told us about him, about his connection to Ethan, it seemed like a recipe for more hurt. I know, Mom. I had the same fears initially, but I was wrong. She continues. Anyone who sees you together, it's obvious. He cherishes you, Allie. Not the idea of you or what you represent, but you, exactly as you are. Tears well unexpectedly. That's it exactly. He sees me, all of me. The good parts and the broken bits and everything in between. She squeezes my hand. That's what love should be. Your father has been seeing me that way for 42 years now. It doesn't fade if it's real. We rejoin the men in the living room, where my father is animatedly describing his latest hobby, beekeeping of all things, to an attentive Michael. The sight of them together, my past and my future in easy conversation, fills me with a quiet joy. Dinner that night is at our favorite neighborhood Italian restaurant. Nothing fancy, just excellent food and warm service in a space where the owner knows us by name. It's deliberately casual, a calm before the storm of the more formal events to come. So, my father says as we linger over tiramisu, tomorrow's the big rehearsal dinner. First time both families will be together in one place. Don't remind me. Michael groans good-naturedly. Mom has been reviewing seating arrangements like she's planning a NATO summit. Is Ethan bringing his girlfriend? My mother asks, trying and failing to sound merely conversational. Yes, Jessica will be there. I confirm. She's lovely, Mom. You'll like her? My mother nods, not quite meeting my eyes. For all her support of my relationship with Michael, I know she still harbors some maternal resentment toward Ethan for hurting me. Some wounds heal slower than others. Well, my father says briskly, we'll all be on our best behavior. Right, Catherine? My mother smiles innocently. I'm always on my best behavior, James. You know that. Michael catches my eye across the table, his expression both amused and sympathetic. We've discussed this, the potential for awkwardness, the lingering tensions, the social minefields of bringing together two families with such different backgrounds and one significant shared history. It'll be fine, I say, as much to myself as to them. Everyone loves a wedding. Friday dawns bright and clear, a perfect early autumn day that hopefully portends well for our outdoor ceremony on Sunday. I spend the morning with my mother and Jenna, indulging in the traditional pre-wedding spa treatments that Vivian had insisted on arranging. I could get used to this. Jenna sighs as we recline in plush robes between services, champagne flutes in hand. The Bennett lifestyle has its perks. Don't get too comfortable, I warn her. This is definitely not our everyday reality. Michael works 80-hour weeks and I'm drowning in dissertation research. Most nights we're lucky to stay awake through a full episode of anything before collapsing. Still, my mother muses, there are advantages to marrying into means, security, opportunities. Mom, I say gently, you know that's not why I'm with Michael? She pats my hand. Of course not, sweetheart. But it doesn't hurt that the man you love happens to have resources. That's all I meant. It's a perspective I understand, coming from parents who worked hard all their lives to provide a comfortable but never extravagant existence. To them, the Bennett wealth represents a kind of safety net they never had. What they don't fully grasp, what perhaps only Michael and I truly understand, is that the Bennett fortune comes with golden handcuffs, expectations that can constrain as much as they enable. Michael has always had an ambivalent relationship with his family's money. He accepts certain benefits, his education, connections that helped secure his position at a top hospital, while rejecting others. He drives a modest car, lives in a comfortable but not ostentatious apartment, and donates a significant portion of his substantial surgeon's salary to organizations that provide medical care to underserved communities. Different kind of rich, Jenna had observed once, comparing him to Ethan, who embodied the more traditional Bennett approach to wealth as both right and responsibility. The rehearsal and dinner are at the Hartford Club, a venerable institution that has hosted Bennett family events since approximately the dawn of time, if Vivian is to be believed. We arrive early for the actual rehearsal, walking through the ceremony choreography with our wedding party, Jenna and 2 other close friends as my bridesmaids, Michael's medical school roommate Carlo as best man, along with his brother Ethan and colleague Sanjay as groomsmen. Ethan's inclusion had been Michael's idea, an olive branch I'd supported after some initial hesitation. The brothers' relationship, while never close, had stabilized in the months since our engagement. If not quite warm, they were at least genuinely cordial, bound by shared history and family obligation, if not natural affinity. The rehearsal itself goes smoothly, everyone hitting their marks with minimal confusion. It's afterward, as we transition to the private dining room for dinner, that I feel the first flutter of real anxiety. This is it, both families together in one space, the past and present converging. Michael senses my tension as we wait to make our entrance, his hand finding mine and squeezing gently. Remember, if it gets unbearable, our code word is appendectomy. You say it, and I'll fake a medical emergency that requires our immediate departure. I laugh despite my nerves. That might damage your professional reputation if it gets back to the hospital. Worth it, he says with a wink. Besides, I've got an excellent record with appendectomies. Very believable. We enter the dining room to applause, and I'm immediately struck by the visual contrast between the 2 sides of the room. The Bennett contingent, Vivian regal in midnight blue, Richard distinguished in his custom tuxedo, various aunts and uncles and cousins all similarly well appointed, occupies one side. My smaller family and friends, warm, slightly less polished but radiating genuine happiness, fills the other. It's like watching 2 different species attempt to coexist in the same ecosystem. Ethan and Jessica are already seated, deep in conversation with Michael's cousin Anne. Ethan looks up as we enter, his expression neutral but not unwelcoming. Jessica smiles warmly, raising her glass in our direction. I return the gesture, grateful for her presence. In our few interactions, I've found her to be both kind and perceptive, with a quiet strength that seems good for Ethan. Vivian has orchestrated the seating with strategic precision, families intermingled but with careful buffers in place. My father is seated beside Richard Bennett, a placement that might have alarmed me if I hadn't known that Dad's genuine intellectual curiosity and complete lack of social intimidation would likely make him one of the few people capable of drawing Richard out of his customary reserve. Michael and I make our rounds, greeting guests and accepting congratulations. When we reach Ethan and Jessica, there's a brief moment of awkwardness that Jessica deftly navigates. "Allie, you look stunning," she says, standing to embrace me. "And remarkably calm for someone 2 days from wedding vows. Trust me, it's all surface," I confess with a laugh. "Underneath, I'm a mess of checklists and contingency plans." "She's been incredible," Michael adds, his arm slipping around my waist. "I just show up where and when I'm told." "Smart man," Ethan comments, the first words he's spoken. Knows his role. There's no edge to the words, just a hint of the dry humor that had once been part of his charm. "Jessica's been giving me the same advice," he continues, glancing at his girlfriend with unmistakable affection. "Enthusiastic agreement is apparently key to wedding survival." "For the record, I said thoughtful support, not blind agreement," Jessica corrects, her tone light but pointed. There's a difference. The exchange reveals volumes about their dynamic, her gentle challenging, his receptiveness to it. Whatever they've built seems healthier than what we had, a thought that brings me surprising comfort. "How's the environmental law firm going?" I asked Jessica, genuinely interested. She'd recently left a corporate position to join a nonprofit focused on climate litigation. Her face lights up. "It's challenging but incredibly fulfilling. We just filed a major case against an industrial polluter in the Connecticut River watershed. Less money, more purpose. The Bennett way." Ethan deadpans, but with a hint of pride that suggests he truly supports her choice, despite its deviation from the traditional family focus on wealth accumulation. Michael and I move on after a few more minutes of surprisingly comfortable conversation. As we walk away, he leans close to my ear. See? Not so bad. No, I agree. Not bad at all. The dinner progresses with the smooth efficiency that characterizes all Vivian Bennett productions. The food is exquisite, the wine perfectly paired, the service impeccable. Between courses, Richard Bennett rises to offer the traditional father of the groom toast, a moment I've been quietly dreading given his historical indifference toward both Michael and me. When Michael was born, he begins, his voice carrying effortlessly through the room. Vivian and I already had one perfect son. He nods toward Ethan, who shifts slightly in his seat. We weren't sure what to do with a second, particularly one who, from the earliest age, seemed determined to forge his own path. There's a ripple of polite laughter, though I feel Michael tense beside me. Michael rejected the Bennett family business without apology. He chose medicine, and not the lucrative, comfortable specialty we might have expected, but trauma surgery. Unpredictable hours, high stress, limited financial upside, relatively speaking. I resist the urge to reach for Michael's hand under the table, knowing this public assessment of his choices is harder for him than he'll admit. I didn't understand it, Richard continues. For years, I viewed his choices as a sort of rejection of our family values, of the path we had laid out. He pauses, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. What I failed to see was that Michael wasn't rejecting our values at all. He was distilling them to their essence. The Bennett commitment to excellence, to making an impact, he simply applied it differently. Michael looks up sharply, surprise evident in his face. This is not the speech either of us expected. And then he found Allison, Richard continues, turning slightly to include me in his gaze. Another surprise. Another choice I didn't immediately understand. My stomach tightens, anticipating where this might go, but Richard surprises me again. But watching them together these past 2 years, seeing the partnership they've built, one based on mutual respect, shared purpose, and genuine love, I've come to recognize that my younger son's compass was true all along. He knew what he wanted, what he needed, and he had the courage to pursue it, regardless of expectation or convention. He raises his glass. So I offer this toast not just to the bride and groom, but to the path they've chosen together. May it continue to be guided by the same wisdom and integrity that brought them to this moment. To Michael and Allison. To Michael and Allison, the room echoes, glasses raised. I blink back unexpected tears, deeply moved by words I never thought to hear from Richard Bennett. Beside me, Michael seems equally affected, his usual composure momentarily cracked to reveal raw emotion. As the dinner continues, my father follows with his own toast, shorter, warmer, full of the genuine affection and dad jokes I'd expected. Other friends and family members offer their own words of blessing and celebration. By the time dessert is served, the initial stiffness between the two families has mellowed considerably, helped along by good food, excellent wine, and the universal human tendency to soften in the face of genuine love. Later, as guests begin to depart, my mother corners me near the coat check. "That Richard Bennett," she says, shaking her head in wonder. "I never would have expected such humanity from him, based on what you'd told us. That makes 2 of us, I admit. I think he genuinely meant it too." "Of course he did," she says with the certainty of someone who has spent decades reading people's true intentions in hospital rooms and crisis situations. Men like that don't say things they don't mean, especially publicly. He's seen something in you and Michael that changed his perspective. Or he's just happy Ethan found someone more suitable and the family crisis was averted, I suggest, only half joking. My mother gives me a reproving look. "Don't diminish this, Allie. Acceptance from family matters, even family by marriage, especially when it comes from an unexpected source." She's right, of course. Despite my complicated relationship with the Bennett family dynamics, Richard's words had touched something deep in me, a place that still, occasionally, questioned whether I truly belonged in their world, whether Michael was making some sort of sacrifice by choosing me over a partner who might have navigated his family's expectations more naturally. As the evening winds down, I find myself momentarily alone in a quiet corner of the club's elegant foyer. The dinner has been a success by any measure. Families blended without major incident, toasts delivered and received with grace, details executed flawlessly. Yet I feel a curious melancholy beneath my genuine happiness, a whisper of something unresolved. "Penny, for your thoughts," comes a familiar voice, and I turn to see Ethan standing a few feet away, close enough for conversation, but maintaining a respectful distance. "Inflation," I reply with a small smile. "They're worth at least $1 by now." He laughs, the sound bringing an unexpected pang of recognition. For 4 years, that laugh had been part of the soundtrack of my life. "Fair enough." He steps slightly closer. "Jessica's in the ladies' room. Mom's giving her the 3rd degree about her family's summer home in the Berkshires. Poor thing. Jessica can handle herself," I observe. "She doesn't seem easily intimidated." "No," he agrees, genuine admiration in his voice. "She isn't. It's one of the things I love about her. The word love hangs between us, significance in its casual use. This is the first time either of us has referenced loving someone else in the other's presence. I'm glad, Ethan," I say sincerely. "She seems wonderful for you. Better than I was." He shakes his head. "Not better. Different. Right for who I am now, maybe. Who I'm trying to become." He hesitates. "The person I was with you, I'm not proud of him. Especially at the end. We've been through this," I remind him gently. "Water under the bridge. I know, and I'm not trying to dredge it all up again before your wedding. I just wanted to say," he takes a breath, "I'm happy for you, Allie. You and Michael. It's strange sometimes, I won't pretend it isn't, but seeing you together, it's right. You bring out the best in each other." The simple honesty in his words touches me deeply. "Thank you," I say softly. "That means more than you know. He's a better man than I was." Ethan continues, his voice low. "Maybe than I'll ever be, but I'm working on it." Jessica helps. "And seeing you heal, move forward, build this new life, it's helped me understand some things about myself. Things I needed to face." I'm saved from having to formulate a response by Jessica's return. She assesses the situation with a quick glance, then slides her arm through Ethan's with natural ease. "Your mother is formidable," she tells him with a mixture of exasperation and respect. "I feel like I just passed a comprehensive exam on my family tree, educational background, and 5-year career goals. Welcome to the Bennett experience," I say with a sympathetic laugh. "If it helps, I failed that exam spectacularly the first time. And yet here you are," she observes, her gaze warm, "about to join the dynasty." "On my own terms," I clarify. She nods, understanding in her eyes. "The only way to do it and keep your soul intact, I suspect." Looking at them together, Ethan and the woman who challenges him, supports him, helps him become a better version of himself, I feel the last wisp of unresolved emotions settling into place. The story of Ethan and me had been complicated, painful in its ending, but it had led us both exactly where we needed to be, with the people who could truly see us, love us as we are while encouraging us to grow. "We should go," Ethan says, checking his watch. "Early client meeting tomorrow?" "Of course," I say. "Thank you both for being here. It means a lot to Michael. And to me." Jessica hugs me briefly. "Wouldn't have missed it. See you Sunday for the main event." Ethan hesitates, then leans in to kiss my cheek, the gesture brotherly and appropriate. "Be happy, Allie. You deserve it." I watch them leave, Jessica's hand tucked into the crook of Ethan's arm, their bodies angled toward each other in the unconscious way of people who have found their match. There's a rightness to it that brings a sense of completion, of stories finding their proper endings. "Everything okay?" Michael asks, appearing at my side, his hand finding its familiar place at the small of my back. "Perfect," I say, meaning it completely for perhaps the first time. Everything is perfect. The morning of our wedding dawns with the kind of crystalline autumn beauty that seems almost suspiciously perfect, as if the universe has decided to grant us this one flawless day. Sunlight streams through golden leaves, the air is crisp but not cold, and the forecast promises ideal conditions for our late afternoon outdoor ceremony. I wake in my parents' hotel suite, having followed the tradition of spending the night before the wedding apart from Michael, though we'd both agreed it was a silly superstition. Still, there's something sweet about the anticipation, the sense of ritual separation before our formal joining. My mother brings me coffee in bed, just as she did on special mornings throughout my childhood. Birthdays, first days of school, the morning of college graduation. "Last morning is just a Matthews," she says, perching on the edge of the bed. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "Calm," I say, surprising myself with the truth of it. Happy. Ready? She studies me, maternal assessment in full force. You know, when your father and I got married, I was a nervous wreck. Threw up twice before the ceremony. Mom! I laugh, nearly spilling my coffee. You never told me that. Didn't want to set a precedent, she says with a wink. But yes, absolute disaster. And we'd been together for years, like you and Michael. I was sure loved him completely. But the enormity of it hit me that morning. This life I was choosing, this person I was binding myself to forever. But you went through with it, I observe. Obviously, best decision I ever made, she confirms. The nerves weren't doubt. They were recognition of the magnitude of the step. The fact that you're calm tells me you've already done that work. You've already considered the magnitude and made your peace with it. She's right, I realize. The past 2 years with Michael, especially the journey to this wedding day, had been a continuous process of choosing him, choosing us, choosing the life we want to build together. Today's ceremony isn't a leap into the unknown, but a public affirmation of a choice already made and reaffirmed countless times. The hours that follow are a blur of activity, hair and makeup artists arriving, flowers being delivered, last-minute texts with the wedding planner about timeline adjustments. Jenna and my other bridesmaids join us, bringing champagne and laughter and the comfortable bubble of female friendship that creates a cocoon of support around a bride. Have you seen Michael today? I ask Jenna as she helps fasten the delicate buttons running down the back of my dress, an elegant sheath of ivory silk with subtle lace detailing, modernly simple but with classic lines that even Vivian had unreservedly approved. Briefly, when I dropped off your gift, she says, he looked annoyingly handsome and disgustingly happy. Also slightly nervous, which was endearing. He's nervous? This surprises me. Michael, who faces life or death situations daily in the operating room, who navigates his family's complex expectations with practiced ease, nervous about our wedding. In the best way, Jenna assures me. The I can't believe my good fortune kind of nervous, not the I'm having second thoughts kind. The knowledge warms me, this evidence of Michael's emotional investment in the day, in us. Not that I doubted it, but there's something deeply affirming about knowing he feels the significance of this moment as profoundly as I do. The photographer arrives, capturing the traditional preparation moments. My mother fastening my grandmother's pearl necklace around my throat. My father's first look at me in my wedding dress, his eyes immediately welling with tears. The bridesmaids helping with the veil. Through it all, I maintain that unexpected sense of calm centeredness, present in each moment rather than anxious about the next. And then suddenly it's time. We make our way to the Hartford Country Club, where the ceremony will take place on the terraced lawn overlooking the river. The October afternoon has maintained its perfect clarity, the setting sun beginning to cast a golden glow over the white chairs arranged in neat rows, the floral arch where Michael and I will speak our vows. I remain sequestered in a small room off the main building while guests arrive, occasionally receiving updates from the wedding planner about attendance, seating, last-minute adjustments. Michael has sent a single text, "Ready when you are." Always. The simplicity of it, the echo of a promise beyond today's formal words, brings the first tears threatening my carefully applied makeup. None of that now, Jenna warns, dabbing carefully at the corner of my eye. Save it for the walk down the aisle. Maximum dramatic impact. I laugh, grateful as always for her ability to lighten moments that might otherwise become overwhelmingly emotional. You're right. Strategic crying only. Then my father appears at the door, resplendent in his tuxedo, his face a complex mixture of pride and wistfulness that nearly undoes my newfound composure. "They're ready for us, sweetheart," he says, offering his arm. "If you are?" I take a deep breath, feeling the culmination of so many paths, the long journey from trauma to healing, from heartbreak to new love, from uncertainty to this moment of absolute clarity. "I'm ready," I say, taking his arm. More than ready. Music swells as we approach the ceremony area, not the traditional wedding march, but a string quartet playing a piece Michael and I had chosen together, something classical but warm, hopeful. The late afternoon light bathes everything in gold as we pause at the head of the aisle. And then I see him, Michael, my Michael, standing tall beneath the floral arch, his face transforming as he catches sight of me. Something passes between us in that moment, a recognition, a promise, a shared certainty that transcends the ceremony, the witnesses, the external trappings of the day. My father squeezes my hand gently. "He's a good man, Allie," he whispers. "The right man." "I know," I whisper back. "I've known for a long time." The walk down the aisle passes in a blur of smiling faces, friends, family, colleagues, all rising to acknowledge our entrance. I'm vaguely aware of Vivian Bennett in the front row, impeccable in sage green silk, Richard beside her looking surprisingly affected, my mother already dabbing at tears, Ethan and Jessica standing with the rest, genuine warmth in their expressions. But mostly, there is Michael, growing clearer with each step, his eyes never leaving mine. When we reach him, my father places my hand in Michael's with the traditional gesture of giving, but there's nothing passive in the exchange. This is not a transfer of ownership, but a joining freely chosen, equally embraced. The ceremony itself is both timeless and uniquely ours. We've chosen a friend to officiate, someone who knows our story and can speak authentically about the journey that brought us here. We've written our own vows, rejecting the Bennett family's traditional Episcopal service for something more personal, more reflective of our shared values. When it's time for those vows, Michael takes both my hands in his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "Allie," he begins, "I've been a surgeon long enough to know that healing isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about growth, adaptation, finding new strength in the mended places. You taught me that, not just through your own journey, but through how you love, completely, courageously, with eyes wide open to both beauty and pain." He takes a breath, his thumbs tracing small circles on my palms. "I vow to love you with that same courage, to see you, truly see you, in your complexity and magnificence, to walk beside you through whatever comes, not as a protector or fixer, but as a partner, equal in vulnerability, equal in strength." Tears well despite my determination to remain composed. This extraordinary man who has reframed my understanding of what love can be, standing before me with his heart so openly offered. When my turn comes, my voice trembles slightly but gains strength as I speak the words I've carefully crafted, revised, held close in preparation for this moment. "Michael, you found me at a time when I was reclaiming myself, relearning my own worth piece by piece. You never tried to rush that process or shape it to your expectations. You simply witnessed it, supported it, celebrated each victory as if it were your own." I squeeze his hands, drawing strength from his steady presence. "I vow to bring that same patience, that same unconditional acceptance to our marriage, to honor your journey as you've honored mine, to challenge you when you need challenging and comfort you when you need comfort, to build a life where we both continue becoming our best selves, together." The rest of the ceremony passes in a haze of emotional intensity. The exchange of rings, the pronouncement of our union, the first kiss as husband and wife. And then we're walking back up the aisle together, surrounded by applause and cheers, and the golden light of a perfect autumn sunset, married in name as we've been in heart for longer than either of us can precisely define. The reception that follows is everything we hoped for. Elegant without being stuffy, joyful without being chaotic. We dance our first dance to the song that had been playing the night Michael proposed. My father spins me around the floor with surprising grace for a former history teacher. Michael and his mother share a dance that, from my observing distance, seems to include a conversation of some significance, given the unusual display of emotion on Vivian's typically composed face. Throughout the evening, what strikes me most is the seamless blending that seems to be occurring, not just between our disparate families, but between past and present, between the various chapters of our lives that have led us here. I catch glimpses of unlikely connections forming. My mother deep in conversation with Vivian about hospital administration, Jenna laughing with one of Michael's surgeon colleagues, Jessica and my father discovering a shared passion for environmental conservation. Even Ethan seems genuinely at ease, congratulating us with apparent sincerity during the receiving line, later clinking glasses with his brother during a toast with genuine affection, rather than the performative brotherhood they sometimes display at family functions. "We did it," Michael murmurs at one point, finding a rare moment alone with me between dances and photographs and conversations with well-wishers. "Married without major incident. No family feuds, no medical emergencies, no last-minute objections from mysterious past lovers." I laugh, leaning into him slightly. "Don't jinx it." We still have cake cutting and at least 2 more hours of reception to survive. True. He presses a kiss to my temple. But even if disaster strikes now, the important part is done. You're stuck with me, Matthews Bennett. Happily stuck, I correct, turning to capture his lips briefly. Very happily stuck. The rest of the evening unfolds in a kaleidoscope of moments that will remain etched in memory long after the details blur, cutting the cake without the cliché of smearing it on each other's faces, much to the photographer's disappointment, the circle of friends that forms around us during a particularly energetic dance number, the quiet moment Michael and I steal to slip outside and breathe the crisp night air, looking up at stars emerging in the darkening sky. Happy? He asks, his arm around my waist, his body warm against mine in the October chill. Beyond happy, I say truthfully. This day, it's been perfect. Not just the event itself, but what it represents. Where we've been, where we're going. He turns me to face him, his expression serious in the soft outdoor lighting. I meant what I said in my vows, Allie. Every word. You've changed how I understand love, how I understand myself. As you have for me, I reply, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw. Who would have thought 3 years ago that we'd end up here? That night in the hospital when Ethan called you instead of coming himself. It could have gone so differently. Michael is quiet for a moment, remembering. In the chaotic aftermath of my assault, with Ethan unreachable at a business dinner, it had been Michael who came to the emergency room. Michael who had sat with me until my parents arrived, who had translated medical terminology, who had shown the first glimmer of the compassion and steadiness that would eventually become my lifeline. I knew that night, he says finally. Not that we would end up together, that would have been inappropriate to even think. But I knew you were extraordinary. The way you held yourself together, how you were already thinking about healing even in the midst of trauma. I remember thinking Ethan was the luckiest man alive and hoping he realized it. He didn't, I say, but without bitterness. But that's okay. It led us here, and here is exactly where I want to be. We rejoin the reception for its final hour, dancing and laughing and soaking in the celebration that surrounds us. By the time we make our exit through a tunnel of sparklers held by our closest friends and family, I am exhausted, but filled with a deep contentment that has nothing to do with the perfect execution of event details and everything to do with the man beside me, the life ahead of us. The hotel suite waiting for us is predictably luxurious, a Bennett-level indulgence that for once I'm happy to accept. After the whirlwind of the day, the quiet privacy feels like a gift, a space where we can begin to process the magnitude of what we've just done, the commitment we've just made. Mrs. Matthews Bennett? Michael says softly as the door closes behind us. That still sounds surreal. Dr. Matthews Bennett, I correct with a smile. Let's get the titles right. Not for another year, he reminds me, referring to the completion of my doctorate. Though I have complete faith you'll finish on schedule. You're the most determined person I know. I move toward him, suddenly shy despite our years together, the intimacy we've already shared. There's something about this night, this first joining as husband and wife, that feels new, significant in ways I hadn't anticipated. Help me with these buttons? I ask, turning to present the long row that runs down my spine. They defeated Jenna this morning. Took her 15 minutes to fasten them all. Michael's fingers are deft, practiced from years of surgical precision. He works from the top down, his breath warm against my neck, occasionally pressing a kiss to newly exposed skin. When the last button is undone, he doesn't immediately remove the dress, but instead traces the line of my spine with gentle fingers. You are so beautiful, he murmurs, inside and out. Every day I wake up wondering how I got this lucky. I turn in his arms, letting the dress fall away, standing before him in the delicate lingerie chosen for this night. Not luck, I correct, reaching for the buttons of his shirt. Choice. We chose each other, Michael, with open eyes and full hearts. That's better than luck. That's purpose. His eyes darken as he takes in the sight of me, desire mingling with something deeper, more reverent. Purpose. He agrees, his voice rough. I like that. What follows is both familiar and entirely new, the geography of each other's bodies known by heart, yet somehow transformed by the promises we've made, the public declaration of our commitment. We take our time, rediscovering each sensation, each response, sealing our vows with the oldest language of love. Later, tangled in luxurious sheets with moonlight streaming through partially open curtains, I rest my head on Michael's chest and listen to the steady beat of his heart. His fingers trail lazily through my hair, now freed from its elaborate styling, the silence between us comfortable and complete. "What are you thinking?" he asks eventually, his voice low in the darkness. I consider the question, sorting through the tangle of emotions that make up this perfect exhaustion. "I'm thinking about journeys," I say finally. "About how the worst night of my life eventually led to the best years of my life. About how sometimes we have to break before we can rebuild stronger." His arms tighten around me. "I wish I could take away the breaking part. If I could go back and prevent what happened to you." "I know," I interrupt gently, "but then we wouldn't be here exactly as we are. And I wouldn't trade us, for anything. Not even to erase that pain." He's quiet for a long moment, processing. "That's a profound way to hold it, Allie. To see the value in the whole journey, not just the pleasant parts. It's the only way I know how to make sense of it," I admit. To find meaning in what felt meaningless at the time. The assault, Ethan's rejection, all of it leading here to you, to us. "To us," he echoes, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. Past, present, and future. I turn my face up to his, finding his lips in the moonlit darkness. "I love you, Michael Matthews Bennett. Today and all our tomorrows. And I love you," he responds, his voice thick with emotion. "More than I have words to express." We drift into sleep, wrapped in each other's arms. The first night of our married life, a perfect blend of passion and peace, of culmination and beginning. As consciousness fades, I find myself filled with a bone-deep certainty. Whatever comes next, joys or challenges, triumphs or struggles, we will face it together. Two people who have learned the hard way what matters, who value the strength found in healing, who choose each other anew with each dawning day. 3 years later, I stand in our kitchen, a different kitchen, in a different home, but filled with the same love that has been the foundation of our marriage. The house is in a leafy neighborhood just outside Hartford, close enough to the hospital for Michael's sometimes urgent commute, but removed from the urban bustle. With 4 bedrooms, a spacious yard, and a sun-filled office where I see my private therapy clients 2 days a week, it represents the next chapter of our shared life. I'm arranging flowers on the dining table, not with Vivian Bennett's practiced precision, but with my own more casual aesthetic, when I hear the front door open. "Hello?" Michael calls, his voice carrying the slight edge of exhaustion that often follows a long surgery. "In the dining room?" I reply, adjusting a stubborn stem that refuses to cooperate. He appears in the doorway, surgical bag still slung over his shoulder, tie loosened around his neck. Despite the evident fatigue, his face brightens at the sight of me, a transformation that still makes my heart skip after 5 years together. "The famous Bennett Sunday dinner," he observes, nodding toward my preparations. "I forgot that was tonight. Convenient amnesia," I tease, abandoning the flowers to greet him properly with a kiss. "You say that every month." He laughs, setting down his bag to pull me closer. "And yet I always show up, charming and presentable. A miracle of modern marriage." The monthly Bennett family dinner had been Vivian's idea after our first anniversary, a way to maintain family connections amid increasingly busy lives. What had started as a somewhat stilted obligation has evolved over time into something approaching genuine togetherness, if not always the warm intimacy I share with my own parents during our regular visits. "How was the surgery?" I ask, returning to my floral arrangement as Michael loosens his tie further, settling into one of the dining chairs with a sigh. "Complicated but successful. 10-year-old with internal injuries from a bike accident. Touch and go for a while, but she stabilized nicely. Should make a full recovery." The quiet pride in his voice warms me. This is my husband, a man who holds children's lives in his skilled hands, who views each successful surgery not as a personal triumph, but as a gift returned to a family in crisis. "You're amazing," I say simply. He smiles, the expression softening the fatigue around his eyes. "Just doing my job." "How was your day? Any breakthroughs with the Richardson teen?" I consider the question, still moved by his consistent interest in my work, his understanding of its importance, though it lacks the dramatic urgency of his own. "Actually, yes. We had a good session. She's starting to open up about the underlying anxiety. Small steps, but meaningful ones. Small steps add up," he observes. "You taught me that." Our easy exchange of professional details, the genuine interest in each other's work, remains one of my favorite parts of our relationship. Unlike Ethan, who had viewed my counseling career as admirable but somewhat secondary, Michael has always treated my profession with the same respect he expects for his own. Different spheres of healing, but equally valuable. "What time is everyone arriving?" he asks, glancing at his watch. 7. "So you have time for a shower and power nap if you need it." He rises, dropping a kiss on the top of my head. "Shower yes, nap no? I'll help with dinner prep instead." "Deal," I agree. "Though if you fall asleep while chopping vegetables, I take no responsibility for missing fingers." He laughs, heading upstairs with the familiar sound of his bag being set down in the hallway, his shoes kicked off outside our bedroom door. I finish the flowers and move to the kitchen, surveying the ingredients for tonight's meal. These family dinners rotate between our home, Richard and Vivian's much grander residence, and Ethan and Jessica's downtown penthouse. Each hosting comes with its own flavor: Vivian's formal perfection, Ethan and Jessica's sleek modernity, our more relaxed warmth. Today's menu is simple but thoughtful: locally sourced roast chicken, a concession to Richard's traditional tastes, seasonal vegetables from the farmer's market, Jessica's environmental sensibilities, and my mother's recipe for chocolate bread pudding, a personal touch that has, surprisingly, become Vivian's favorite dessert, though she would never admit it directly. Michael reappears 30 minutes later, freshly showered and changed into casual slacks and a soft sweater that I bought him for his birthday. He looks younger this way, more relaxed, the careful Bennett polish temporarily set aside in the safety of our home. "Better?" I ask as he reaches for a cutting board. "Much." He begins slicing vegetables with the precise efficiency that translates perfectly from operating room to kitchen. Though I still maintain these dinners should start earlier. 8 o'clock dessert is why I can never sleep on Bennett Sundays. "Take it up with your mother," I suggest, knowing he never will. For all his independence, Michael maintains a carefully balanced relationship with Vivian, respectful of her traditions while firm about his own boundaries. It's a negotiation I've watched with interest, occasionally borrowing his tactics for my own interactions with my formidable mother-in-law. We work in comfortable sync, preparing the meal while sharing details of our respective weeks. This is us at our best. Collaborative, communicative, creating something together, whether it's a family dinner or the larger architecture of our shared life. The doorbell rings precisely at 7. Bennett punctuality, Michael notes with a smile, wiping his hands on a kitchen towel. "I'll get it." Vivian and Richard arrive first, bearing an expensive bottle of wine and Vivian's shrewd assessment of our home's current state. Though she has mostly accepted our decision to live in what she considers the near suburbs, rather than either downtown Hartford or the more exclusive enclaves favored by the Bennett social circle, she cannot help cataloging potential improvements with each visit. "The garden is looking lovely, Allison," she says after air-kissing my cheeks, "though those hydrangeas along the side fence could use more acidic soil. They're not nearly blue enough." "Thank you for the tip, Vivian," I reply, having learned that sincere appreciation for her advice, whether or not I intend to follow it, is the easiest path to harmony. Richard is more subdued, as always, offering a brief but genuine hug before gravitating toward Michael to discuss the hospital's latest acquisition of surgical technology. Their relationship has warmed considerably since our wedding, Richard's grudging respect for Michael's medical career evolving into something approaching paternal pride. Ethan and Jessica arrive 10 minutes later, bringing a homemade pie from a local organic bakery, and the news that has been the subtext of tonight's gathering: Jessica's pregnancy, now safely into the second trimester and ready to be shared with the family. "Oh!" Vivian exclaims when they make the announcement over appetizers, her hands flying to her perfectly styled hair in a rare display of genuine emotion. "A grandchild! At last!" The slight emphasis on "at last" does not escape me, though I maintain my smile. Michael's hand finds mine under the table, a silent communication of shared understanding. We've been married 3 years without producing the Bennett heir that Vivian not so subtly hints about during most family gatherings. That Jessica has beaten us to this milestone is both a relief, diverting Vivian's attention, and a complex emotional moment that we'll process privately later. "When are you due?" I ask Jessica, genuinely happy for them despite the complicated undercurrents. "July," she answers, her hand resting protectively on the slight swell visible beneath her loose dress, though I'm hoping for early July rather than late. The thought of being 9 months pregnant during the hottest part of summer is not appealing. "Boy or girl?" Richard asks, practical as always. "We've decided not to find out." Ethan replies, surprising me slightly. This choice for the unknown seems unlike the meticulously planned Ethan I had known. We want to be surprised. How wonderfully traditional. Vivian approves, her initial shock transforming into the familiar territory of planning and organizing. We'll need to think about a nursery at your place, of course. That second bedroom with the eastern exposure would be perfect. And the baby shower, perhaps the club in May when the gardens are at their best. Jessica catches my eye across the table, a flicker of amused tolerance in her expression. She has learned, as I did, to navigate Vivian's well-intentioned takeovers with grace, allowing the Bennett matriarch the illusion of control while quietly maintaining her own authority over the decisions that truly matter. Dinner progresses with the expected ebb and flow of Bennett family dynamics. Richard's questions about Ethan's latest business acquisition, Vivian's gentle probing about my academic timeline, Michael's deft redirection when conversations veer toward potentially contentious topics. The pregnancy announcement has shifted the energy, though, infusing the usual patterns with a new current of anticipation and change. As I serve dessert, the bread pudding that represents my own family's tradition inserted into the Bennett ritual, I find myself observing each person at the table with new clarity. Vivian, animated by the prospect of a grandchild, revealing the warmer emotional core beneath her polished exterior. Richard, less reserved than usual, asking surprisingly thoughtful questions about Jessica's prenatal care. Ethan, watching his wife with undisguised tenderness, a softness I never witnessed in him during our years together. And Michael, my Michael, engaging everyone with his characteristic blend of genuine interest and quiet confidence, occasionally meeting my gaze across the table with looks that still make my heart beat faster after all this time. Later, after our guests have departed, Vivian with lists already forming for baby preparations, Jessica with promises to call me for lunch soon, Ethan with a brief but sincere embrace for his brother, Michael and I clean up in comfortable silence. It's only when the last dish is dried, the last wine glass put away, that he broaches the subject we've both been circling. "You okay?" he asks simply, leaning against the kitchen counter, his eyes gentle on my face. "I'm fine," I say automatically, then amend to honesty. "Mostly fine. Happy for them, genuinely. Just processing. The baby," he clarifies, though he doesn't need to. "Yes," I sigh, organizing my thoughts. "It's not jealousy exactly. Or at least, not in the way people might assume." He waits, giving me space to articulate feelings I'm still sorting through myself. "I'm happy for them," I repeat. "Jessica will be an amazing mother. And Ethan, I think fatherhood might bring out the best in him, actually. He's changed a lot these past few years." "He has," Michael agrees. "Jessica's influence partly, but also his own work on himself. The therapy seems to have helped." I nod, remembering Ethan's commitment after our breakup to understand his own reactions better, to grow from the experience. "I think what I'm feeling is more reflective than jealous, thinking about paths taken and not taken. How different life might have been." Michael moves closer, his hands finding my waist. "If you had stayed with Ethan, you mean?" "Yes." I meet his eyes directly. "If I'd tried harder to be what he needed after the assault. If he'd been different, more patient, we might be the ones announcing a pregnancy right now. Does that make you sad?" His question contains no insecurity, no fear of my answer, just genuine interest in my emotional landscape. "No," I say truthfully. Because that version of me, the one who might have stayed, might have had children with Ethan, wouldn't be who I am now. Wouldn't have done the healing work I needed to do. Wouldn't have found you. His eyes soften. "And you're okay with where we are? With our timeline?" The question touches on conversations we've had over the past year about starting our own family, discussions that have been thoughtful, mutual, sometimes difficult as we navigate my lingering trauma, his brutal work schedule, my academic commitments. I assure him, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw. "When the time is right for us, we'll know. And until then, we'll be the world's best aunt and uncle to the Bennett baby." He smiles, pulling me closer. "Aunt Allie has a nice ring to it." "Uncle Michael?" I counter, the fun one who teaches inappropriate medical facts. "Hey, children should know the proper names for all body parts. It's educational." I laugh, leaning into his embrace, the lingering complexity of the evening settling into perspective. "This is us, Michael and me, imperfect but growing, navigating family expectations and personal timelines, supporting each other through the inevitable emotional complexities of lives intertwined with others. I love you, I say simply. This life we've built, this path we're on, I wouldn't trade it for any other version. Even one with less Bennett family drama, he teases. Even that, I confirm. It's all part of the whole. He kisses me then, tender and familiar yet never routine, never taken for granted. When we part, his expression is thoughtful. You know, I've been thinking, he begins, a hint of nervousness in his voice that immediately captures my attention. Dangerous, I tease gently. Should I be worried? He smiles but doesn't take the bait for banter. I've been looking at the surgical schedule for next year, at my contract terms, at our 5-year plan. We'd created this plan together on our first anniversary, a roadmap of sorts for the major decisions ahead. My doctorate completion, potential career shifts, home buying, and yes, eventually children. And I prompt when he hesitates, and I think I'm ready, he says simply, to start trying for a baby. If you are, the words hang between us, weighted with significance. We've discussed this theoretically, tentatively, but never with this clarity, this directness. What about waiting until I finish my dissertation? I ask, my mind immediately running through the practical considerations. The timeline we agreed on? Plans can change, he says softly. Not because of Ethan and Jessica's news, though I won't pretend the timing is coincidental. It's made me reflect too. But because I've been watching you this past year, Allie, how you are with your young clients, how you've healed, grown stronger, how we've built this foundation together. He takes my hands in his expression earnest. You're going to be an extraordinary mother. And I think I might not be half bad as a father. Different from mine, certainly, but good in my own way. Emotion wells unexpectedly, tears blurring my vision. You'll be amazing, I whisper. The best. So, he says, his voice gentle with understanding. What do you think? Ready to expand this family of ours? Or do we stick with the original timeline? I consider the question deeply, searching my heart, my readiness. The trauma of years ago has healed, its scars long since integrated into the tapestry of who I am. The fear that once paralyzed me, that I might not be whole enough, healed enough for motherhood, has gradually transformed into a quiet confidence in my own resilience, my capacity for love. I think, I say slowly, that the original plan was just that, a plan, not a contract. And plans should serve us, not the other way around. Hope flickers in his eyes. So yes, I say, certainty blooming as I speak the words. Yes, I'm ready. Let's start trying. Let's make a baby, Michael Matthews Bennett. His smile is radiant, joy illuminating his features as he pulls me into an embrace that lifts me off my feet. Really? You're sure? I'm sure. I laugh, clinging to his shoulders. About this, about you, about us, the surest I've ever been. He sets me down gently, his hands framing my face with tender reverence. A family, he says softly. Our family. It already is, I remind him. You and me. We're already a family. We'll just be expanding the membership. Later that night, as we lie together in the quiet darkness of our bedroom, Michael's arm draped protectively across my waist, I reflect on the journey that has brought us here. From the broken woman who once believed herself to be damaged goods, to this moment of perfect certainty about the future we're creating together. What are you thinking? Michael murmurs, his voice heavy with approaching sleep. About healing, I say softly. About how sometimes the broken places become the strongest. About how what looks like an ending can become the most beautiful beginning. He tightens his arm around me, a wordless understanding. As sleep claims us both, I drift away with a profound sense of completion, not of a journey ended, but of one continually unfolding. A life built from the ashes of trauma and betrayal, transformed through love and choice, and the daily commitment to see each other, truly see each other, in all our complexity and wonder. Damaged goods, Ethan had called me once, in a moment of fear and limitation. How wrong he had been. Not damaged, just temporarily broken, with the capacity to heal stronger at the fracture points. Not goods, not an object to be evaluated for worth based on condition, but a human being, complex and resilient, worthy of love not despite my scars, but with them, because of them, through them. And now potentially a mother, a creator of new life. the ultimate reclamation of my body, my future, my capability for love. As consciousness fades, one last thought surfaces. A quiet gratitude for the entire journey, every painful step and unexpected turn that led me here, to this man, this life, this moment of perfect rightness. The universe's most surprising gift, wrapped in the package I would never have chosen but containing exactly what I needed all along. 6 months later, I stare at the small plastic stick in my hand, twin pink lines confirming what my body has been whispering for weeks. Pregnant. After months of trying, of carefully tracking cycles, of moments both passionate and purposeful, of hope and disappointment repeating in monthly rhythms, finally, undeniably pregnant. I sit on the edge of the bathtub, emotions cascading through me in waves too complex to name. Joy, certainly. Wonder. A trace of fear, not of motherhood itself, but of the awesome responsibility it represents. And underneath it all, a bone-deep certainty that this is right, that this child is meant to be, that my body, once violated, once deemed damaged, is perfectly, beautifully capable of creating new life. Michael is at the hospital, in the middle of a complicated surgery that will last hours yet. I'd taken the test alone, unwilling to wait for his return once morning sickness had provided the final confirmation my scientific mind needed to justify the expense of the test. Now, staring at those pink lines, I find myself wishing he were here to share this moment, to see the wonder in my eyes, to hold me as the magnitude of this change washes over us both. But there will be time for that. Hours and days and years stretching ahead, a lifetime of shared moments, of witnessing each other's joy and growth and transformation. I carefully wrap the test in tissue paper and place it in a small gift box I've had ready for weeks, anticipating this moment. Then I text Michael a simple message. "Dinner at home tonight? Something to celebrate." His response comes quickly, despite his presumably busy surgical schedule. "Intriguing. I'll be there by 7. Love you." The hours until his return pass in a haze of productive distraction. I see 2 therapy clients, make progress on my dissertation research, prepare a special dinner with all his favorites. All the while, the knowledge of our child growing inside me hums like a current beneath every activity, charging ordinary moments with extraordinary significance. By the time I hear his key in the lock, the house is filled with the aroma of roasting chicken and herbs. Candles flicker on the dining table, and the small box containing our future sits wrapped beside his plate. "Something smells amazing," he calls as he enters, the familiar routine of his arrival. Keys on the hook, bag by the stairs, shoes kicked off. A comforting soundtrack to our shared life. "Perfect timing," I reply, emerging from the kitchen with a glass of wine for him, sparkling water for myself, a detail I hope he'll notice, a hint before the reveal. He does notice, his observant surgeon's eyes taking in the non-alcoholic choice, a question forming but not yet voiced as he accepts the wine with a kiss. "Special occasion?" he asks, gesturing toward the candlelit table, the formal place settings rarely used for everyday meals. "You could say that," I answer, unable to suppress the smile that wants to break free. "Sit. Everything's ready." We settle at the table, the small wrapped package now visible beside his plate. He eyes it curiously, but waits, following my lead as I serve the meal, ask about his day, maintain the ordinary rhythm of our evenings while anticipation builds beneath the surface. Finally, when I can contain it no longer, I nod toward the box. "Open it." He sets down his fork, reaching for the package with a mixture of curiosity and dawning understanding in his eyes. "Allie, open it," I repeat softly. His surgeon's hands, capable of such precision in the operating room, are less steady now as he unwraps the simple package, lifts the lid, parts the tissue paper to reveal the test with its unmistakable double lines. For a moment he simply stares, emotion rendering him uncharacteristically speechless. When he finally looks up, his eyes shine with unshed tears. "You're pregnant," he says, his voice hushed with wonder. "We're having a baby." I nod, my own eyes filling. "We're having a baby." He's out of his chair in an instant, kneeling beside me, his hands gentle on my still flat stomach, as if our child might somehow feel his touch through layers of tissue and muscle. "When? How far along? Have you seen a doctor? How are you feeling?" The questions tumble out, the meticulous surgeon suddenly transformed into an expectant father, precise medical knowledge momentarily overridden by pure emotion. I laugh through my tears, covering his hands with mine. Based on my calculations, about 6 weeks. I'll make an appointment tomorrow, and I'm feeling everything. Happy, scared, in awe, but mostly just incredibly, indescribably grateful. He rises, pulling me to my feet and into his embrace. We're going to be parents. He whispers against my hair, the words half statement, half prayer. A family. Yes, I confirm, drawing back to meet his gaze. A family built with love and intention. A family created on our own terms, in our own time. Later, lying in bed with his hand protective over the place where our child grows, Michael asks the question I've been expecting. Have you thought about how you want to tell everyone? Your parents? Mine? I have thought about it, turning the question over in my mind during the hours between discovering the pregnancy and sharing it with him. I'd like to wait a bit, I say carefully, past the first trimester when the risks decrease. Not because I'm worried exactly, but because I want this to be just ours for a while. Our secret. Our miracle. He nods, understanding in his eyes. Whatever you want. Though I should warn you, my mother has developed an almost supernatural ability to detect pregnancies. She'll take one look at you and know. I laugh, recognizing the truth in his words. Vivian Bennett does possess an uncanny perception for certain things, particularly those related to the continuation of the family line. We'll cross that bridge if we come to it, I decide. But for now, just us. Just us, he agrees, his hand gently caressing the infinite potential beneath my skin. The three of us. The weeks that follow take on a dreamlike quality, ordinary routines continuing on the surface while everything changes beneath. Morning sickness becomes my constant companion, though morning proves a cruelly inaccurate description for nausea that appears at unpredictable hours. Michael, true to his nature, researches every potential remedy, arriving home with ginger candies, special teas, acupressure wristbands, and a detailed nutrition plan optimized for first trimester development. You realize I have a medical background too. I remind him when he presents a meticulously organized binder of pregnancy information, complete with tabbed sections and highlighted passages. Yes, but in brains, not babies, he counters, unrepentant in his thoroughness. Humor me. It's how I process. And so I do, recognizing his research as the love language it is, his way of participating in a process that, biologically speaking, excludes him from direct experience. If organizing information gives him a sense of connection, of useful contribution to our growing child, I can certainly accommodate the occasional lecture on folic acid or demonstration of optimal sleeping positions for pregnant women. My parents receive the news with joyful tears when we finally tell them at 12 weeks. My father, who has always worn his emotions openly, weeps unabashedly at the prospect of becoming a grandfather. My mother, more restrained but equally moved, immediately shifts into practical planning mode, a trait I've inherited and come to recognize in myself as I prepare for this new chapter. Do you want me to come stay with you after the birth? She asks, already mentally rearranging her schedule. I could take a month, maybe more. Help you get settled. The offer touches me deeply. This tangible expression of support, so different from what I anticipate from the Bennett side of the equation. Let's discuss details closer to the time, I suggest, not wanting to commit immediately but appreciating the option. But yes, having you here would be wonderful, for a visit at least. Michael, understanding the complexities of merging our different family cultures, adds diplomatically, "We'd love your help, Catherine. And I'm sure my mother will want to be involved as well. We'll figure out an arrangement that works for everyone." The mention of Vivian brings us to the next revelation on our list, telling the Bennett family. We decide to do it at the next monthly dinner, which falls conveniently on a weekend when I'm feeling relatively well, the worst of the first trimester symptoms beginning to subside. Ready for this? Michael asks as we pull into his parents' circular driveway, their imposing home looming before us, a colonial revival that has been in the Bennett family for generations, maintained with the same exacting standards that characterize everything Vivian oversees. As I'll ever be, I reply, smoothing my dress, chosen carefully to neither conceal nor emphasize the slight rounding that has just begun to appear below my waistline. Just remember our agreement. No letting Mom take over the naming process, the nursery design, or the birth plan, he recites dutifully. Boundaries firmly but respectfully maintained. Exactly. I squeeze his hand. United Front. Inside, we find Ethan and Jessica already arrived, their 6-week-old son, William, named for Jessica's grandfather rather than the Bennett family tradition of recycling the same 3 male names for generations, cradled in Richard's arms with surprising tenderness. The sight stops me momentarily, this stern patriarch transformed by the small bundle he holds, his usually impassive face soft with wonder. It's a side of Richard I've rarely glimpsed, a humanity often hidden beneath layers of Bennett reserve and business acumen. Allie, Michael, Vivian greets us, air-kissing our cheeks in her customary fashion. Come see our William. Isn't he perfect? The baby is indeed beautiful, with Ethan's dark hair but Jessica's more delicate features. I lean in to admire him, genuinely moved by his perfect tiny fingers, the bow of his rosebud mouth, the peaceful sleep that seems untroubled by the adults hovering above. He's gorgeous, I say sincerely, meeting Jessica's tired but radiant eyes. How are you doing? Exhausted but good, she admits. He's actually a decent sleeper, thank God. Though we're still adjusting to the whole parenting reality. Ethan stands nearby, his posture conveying both pride and a new humility that parenthood seems to have already instilled. It's been enlightening, he acknowledges with a small smile. I've developed enormous respect for all parents everywhere. This is the hardest job I've ever had, and the most important, Jessica adds quietly. The simple exchange reveals volumes about their approach to parenthood, a shared venture, equally embraced, mutually valued above career or social obligations. It confirms my earlier assessment that fatherhood might indeed bring out the best in Ethan, softening his more rigid edges, expanding his capacity for selfless love. Dinner progresses with baby William as the centerpiece of attention, his occasional waking moments celebrated with the enthusiasm only first-time grandparents can generate. Vivian, normally so composed, transforms into an entirely different person when holding her grandson, cooing nonsense phrases, making faces I would have previously believed her facial muscles incapable of producing. So, she says during a lull in the William-focused conversation, turning her attention to Michael and me, when can we expect your contribution to the next generation of Bennetts? Now that you've seen how wonderful grandparenthood is for us? The opening is so perfect, so precisely what we'd anticipated, that Michael and I exchange an amused glance before he clears his throat. Funny you should ask, Mom, he begins, his hand finding mine under the table. We actually have some news on that front. Vivian's eyes widen, her gaze darting immediately to my midsection with the Bennett perception I've come to both admire and occasionally dread. Allison, she breathes, social polish momentarily abandoned. Are you? Yes, I confirm, unable to suppress my smile. We're expecting, due in November. The reaction is immediate and overwhelming. Vivian gives a most un-Bennett-like shriek of delight, actually clapping her hands together like an excited child. Richard's usual reserve cracks into a genuine smile. Jessica offers warm congratulations, tinged with the special understanding of someone currently in the trenches of early parenthood. And Ethan's reaction perhaps matters most to me, for reasons I can't entirely articulate. He studies me for a long moment, something complex passing through his eyes before his expression settles into sincere pleasure. Congratulations, he says simply. You're going to be wonderful parents. The words, delivered with genuine warmth, feel like the closing of a circle, a final healing of old wounds, a completion of our strange, intertwined journey. The man who once deemed me damaged, now acknowledging, perhaps without fully understanding the significance, my wholeness, my readiness for this most fundamental creation. Thank you, I reply softly, meeting his gaze directly. That means a lot. The moment passes quickly, subsumed in Vivian's enthusiastic planning. 2 grandchildren in 1 year. The Christmas portraits will be magnificent, and Richard's more practical questions about Michael's paternity leave plans, the house's readiness for a nursery, our thoughts on childcare arrangements. Through it all, Michael maintains our agreed-upon boundaries with gentle firmness, neither rejecting his family's interest nor allowing it to overwhelm our autonomy. It's a delicate balance, one we've practiced throughout our relationship, but that takes on new importance as we prepare to raise a child within the orbit of the Bennett family influence. Later that night, as we drive home in comfortable silence, I reflect on the evening, on the genuine joy our news generated, on the unexpected tenderness revealed in Richard, on the healed relationship with Ethan that allows us to share in each other's happiness without lingering shadows. "That went well," Michael observes, reaching for my hand across the console. "Better than I expected, honestly." Dad seems genuinely excited. "He was holding his grandson when we told them," I point out. Perfect timing on our part. "William has already softened him up." Michael laughs. "True. Smart strategy on our part." "I thought so." I agree, stroking my thumb across his knuckles. "Your mother is already planning matching Christmas outfits for the cousins, you realize. We've created a monster. We can handle her," he says confidently. "We've had plenty of practice." And honestly, having her focus distributed between 2 grandchildren instead of laser-focused on just one might be a blessing in disguise. The observation is astute, typical of Michael's perceptive understanding of family dynamics. With 2 babies to dote on, Vivian's sometimes overwhelming attention will be divided, potentially giving both sets of parents more breathing room to establish their own parenting approaches. "How are you feeling?" he asks after a moment, his voice softening. "About everything. The pregnancy, the Bennett family circus, all of it." I consider the question seriously, taking inventory of my emotional landscape. "Good," I say finally, centered. Like everything is unfolding exactly as it should, in its own perfect timing. His hand tightens around mine. "No regrets? About the journey that brought us here?" The question touches on conversations we've had throughout our relationship, about trauma and healing, about paths taken and not taken, about finding meaning in painful experiences. "No regrets?" I say firmly. "Not about any of it. Every step of the journey was necessary to bring us here, to this moment, to the family we're creating." As we drive through the quiet streets toward home, I rest my free hand on the small swell where our child grows, marveling at the perfection of this moment, at the journey from brokenness to wholeness, from damaged goods to the creator of new life, at the unexpected gift of finding purpose in pain, strength in healing, and love in the most unlikely of places. "What are you thinking?" Michael asks as we pull into our driveway, the house that will soon welcome a new life dark and waiting before us. "I'm thinking about full circles," I say softly, "about endings that become beginnings, about how sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead us to the best, if we're brave enough to keep moving forward." He turns to me, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the dashboard lights, love evident in every line of his expression. "You said something similar on our wedding day." "Did I?" I smile, touched that he remembers. "I suppose some truths bear repeating." As we walk toward our home hand in hand, I feel the gentle flutter of movement inside me, the first tangible communication from our child, a reminder of the miracle we've created together. Not despite my past, but with it, through it, because of it. Every step of the journey necessary, every pain transfigured into purpose, every moment of darkness leading ultimately toward light. He said I was damaged goods. I whisper to the night, to the universe, to the child growing beneath my heart. But I healed. I flourished. I loved. And in loving, found myself whole again, not in spite of what broke me, but because I had the courage to rebuild, stronger at the shattered places. Michael's arm slips around my waist, anchoring me to the present, to this perfect moment of completion and new beginning. "You are the strongest person I know, Allie Matthews Bennett," he says simply. "And our child is the luckiest to have you as their mother." As we cross the threshold into our home, our future, I carry within me not just new life, but the full circle of my journey, from victim to survivor to creator, from broken to mended to whole. From damaged goods to the woman who, in healing herself, found the capacity to heal others, to love deeply, to build a family founded on truth and strength and the beauty that can emerge from even the darkest places, if only we have the courage to keep moving forward into light.